All right, ladies and gentlemen, one more for the road here. 2022 is coming to an end, but on Sportswire Radio, we're going live here one more time to speak all the latest happenings here in the world of the NFL and some Major League Baseball. We'll be joined with the rest of the Sportswire Radio team here in about 15 or so minutes. We'll get into the NFL, but we're here first with our longest tenured analyst, Rob Maraska. Rob's got a contest that we spoke about last week about the Aaron Judge and Derek Jeter Tops card, and everybody's been wanting to talk about on Twitter and get involved in it. So, Mr. Maraska, good to be with you here. Happy New Year. And for those that are listening and watching here on Sportswire Radio, set us the tables for who won the contest and who's going to be a lucky winner of an Aaron Judge and Derek Jeter Tops card.
Happy New Year, Tom. Yeah, it was a pretty good contest. I got a pretty, wide. I'll tell you, the clip that you put up got over 1,400 views, which was pretty good. So there was a lot of people involved, a lot of people going for this card, but there's only one lucky winner, and his name is Ernest Desposito, and on Twitter he's at one Hussaman. And he's from Boca Raton, Florida.
Oh, wow. Ernest almost sounds like Ernest Dove, who's also from Florida. So Ernest Dove didn't win this contest, but Ernest Desposito, is that how I read that?
Yeah, Desposito did win the card. He's a big Yankee fan, and he's a New York Giants football fan too. So he's out in Florida. And congratulations to him. There was a lot of people who went for this card. This card was sold out in no time. And so congratulations to Ernest. And that'll be going out as soon as I receive it from Topps.
Fantastic. So we're looking forward to it. Now, that's from the upcoming 2023 set. That's correct?
It's from a special Topps Now set.
Oh, okay. All right.
They only make a certain amount of them, and they go like within a couple hours. So
now, are you getting the Topps 2023 set? Do you have the 22 set, or is just your?
Yeah, I have everything, and I'll be getting the 23 set, and I'll be getting some other special cards too, and I'll have more contests, definitely.
All right, we'll definitely look forward to that. Congratulations to Ernest, and we'll get that clip up tomorrow as well for him, and you can tag me when you make the announcement here shortly. And some baseball news and notes here very quickly before we get to the NFL guys in a few minutes. But what's going on here with Carlos Correa? It seems to me, I thought this was a done deal. And what's going on here, Rob Maraska?
Well, I guess the Giants were right with the medical report. It's a problem that goes way back when he broke his ankle and it was repaired. He has not had any problems with this injury in the major leagues, but the problem is they're worried about the back end of the contract. That's what it basically is. The 12-year contract. They're worried about, I guess, the last 6 or 7 years, but the Mets are working on it, and they're probably going to get a deal done because
you think so? Now, I mean, it was an injury from 8 years ago, and you think about the Twins only gave him a short-term deal, and the Giants backed away, and this is a guy that you give him 12 years, and I mean, these contracts don't usually work out too well.
Oh, no, they don't, but, the Mets are about winning a World Series within Steve Cohen's 5-year plan. So what's going on right now? They're not taking – Boris, of course, is his agent. They're not taking offers from any other teams right now. They're saying it's only about the Mets. So they're giving the Mets time. The Mets want him. He wants to play for the Mets. So they have to work out stuff. They have to work out clauses in the contract. And the latest news is from today that the Mets and I guess Boris are trying to get permission from the Major League Baseball on some wording in the contract. So it looks like right now, 75% chance that he will sign with the Mets, that it'll go through. And right now, they're not taking any other offers from any other teams.
Well, 75% means there's a chance, and you read Twitter and people say it's 51, 58, and I know a lot about percentages and being in New York politics for a long time. And when there's a percentage on something, that doesn't bode too well. certainly this is an interesting situation. A player that has signed 2 long-term contracts and may not end up with either of those teams. Stay tuned. And anything else of news of notes here in Major League Baseball that you think is of interesting developments?
Well, for Mets fan, there's a little interesting development going on. Keith Hernandez does not have a contract with SNY right now, and let's face it, SNY is still owned by the Wilpons. So are they cheaping out? I mean, do they want to really break up the best broadcasting team in Major League Baseball? Or are they going to pay Keith what he wants? We don't know yet. Cohen did not get SNY in the deal for the Mets, and the Wilpons are being the Wilpons, and who knows how the negotiations are going. So right now, as of today, Keith Hernandez is not in that broadcast booth in 2023.
Well, I'll tell you what, opening day for Major League Baseball now is less than 100 days. We are 3 months from opening day as we speak. And I want to give a shout out to somebody who's been with me all week on almost all of my shows. That is Mr. BMD of Colory Championship Wrestling. And he must be really awake because it's 2:37 a.m. out there in England. So I give a shout out to BMD. And BMD is going to be in the house 2 weeks from now. So I'm looking forward to Mr. BMD. And also Justin Gianelli, who's going to be with us here in a few minutes, says, Gary, Keith, and Ron cannot be separated. They're the absolute best. I mean, listen, we're going to find out. I mean, certainly Keith Hernandez not being in that booth, that would be, I think, a big shock to Mets fans here. And anything else, any other news and notes in baseball? I know it's kind of a slow week because it's, holiday week. I know Yankees obviously still might be in the market for things. I hear some different things out there with the Red Sox, but anything else of note out there, any signings, anything else out there that you think is important to note?
It's just, like you said, it's slow. Excuse me. It's a slow week. And, once the new year gets here, some things will heat up. Yeah, the Yankees and the Red Sox are making some moves too. So the Red Sox aren't going to be as bad as we thought they were going to be, which is good. So that division should be pretty good. Of course, the National League East is going to be a beast. We have to see what happens. And the Mets definitely have a backup plan. The Mets are going to be just fine. And I definitely, like I said, 75% was just brought up tonight. I know you said 55% chance. That's what it's been for
75 still, listen, still there's a percentage.
Yeah.
25% still significant. Listen, I've seen a lot of different things. When you tell me that there's a percentage, I mean, this is bizarre. And Justin Gianelli says anyone going to want Trevor Bauer as he is reinstated. Also, Corey Kluber and the Red Sox, 1 year, $10 million contract. Of course, Corey Kluber's had a lot of success in his big league career. And Rich Hill, also a former Met for a brief moment, he's signed. I mean, Rich Hill is the guy that just keeps on going. I mean, Rich Hill is signed a contract, and he's a guy that I guess gives hope to a lot of those guys that keep hanging on. His 12th team in his career he goes to now here coming up.
And he keeps going. It's sort of like
the Pirates. The Pirates took him.
Yeah, it's sort of like Jesse Orosco in the latter part of his career. He just kept going from team to team,
I think it's more than that because 12 teams, I mean, we're going into like Mike Morgan territory here. I mean, certainly, look, he's had some success. And Trevor Bauer, any thoughts on Trevor Bauer here?
I don't know. I heard that, some stuff on Twitter, people wanting the Yankees to go for it. I don't know. The Mets should stay away from him. I think the Mets are fine. Let the Yankees go after him and see what happens. But I definitely think he's gonna get a contract somewhere. He's probably gonna get a 1-year contract. See what happens.
And I see Michael Conforto is a San Francisco Giants. The consolation prize for now of losing out on Carlos Correa, but more so Aaron Judge's. The Giants pick up here on a short-term deal, Michael Conforto.
Yeah, and like you said, they went from Judge to Correa and now to Conforto. But you know what? I like Conforto. He had the bad walk year, and I think he made a mistake by not taking the Mets offer. And then he had the surgery, of course. But I think he'll be all right in San Francisco. I always like Conforto.
And also want to note one more signing here of note, a name we've heard from Mets fans, Yankee fans, and a guy who's had some big years in his career, but tailed off a little bit this year. JD Martinez, 1 year, $10 million contract with the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's a pretty good move for the Dodgers. I thought the Mets, about a month or two, the Mets might be in on that for JD Martinez, but you know what? The Dodgers made a good move, and that's a good signing. I think so anyway.
And Cody Bellinger, we see as a Chicago Cub, also on a short-term deal here. So a number of different moves out there, and it's kind of that slow time of year in baseball, and most of the big free agents are certainly have gone to different teams. We'll see though about a Carlos Correa, and also Hall of Fame announcement is coming up here. We'll see what that develops. And Mr. Maraska, I want to give you the floor. Obviously, want to wish you and your family a happy new year. Congratulations again to Ernest on winning that award. And anything else that you may want to share here, the floor is definitely yours here one more time. And fire away, my friend.
Yeah, I just wanted to wish all our listeners Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you and your family, Tom. We had another excellent year on Sportzwire Radio.
Yes, Sportzwire is over 500 followers now, well over 500 on Facebook. So we're doing good.
Because of Sportzwire, I'm getting so many followers on Twitter, like it's crazy. And these contests and announcing them on Sportswire, I'm getting a lot of people. Lately, I've been getting a lot of Yankee fans because of
that's good. Well, look, you balance. I know you're a Met fan, but you got to get everybody. That's they always say in the world. You got to get everybody.
So, another couple of weeks, I'll have my first contest of 2023, and I'll let you know. But like I said, Happy New Year to you and to everyone else on the show and our listeners. And I'm looking forward to talking to you next week.
Absolutely. And of course, everybody again can follow Rob Maraska on Twitter at @RMaraska, also Facebook, Rob Maraska. So make sure you follow Mr. Maraska for more contests, more baseball talk. We'll see what develops here in the next week. We'll see about the Hall of Fame. Will be interesting to see if anybody else gets elected and anybody else that joins Fred McGriff, who was elected through the new committee here. So definitely we'll see what happens here. But Mr. Maraska, I want to wish you and your family again a happy New Year. Stay safe out there. I know it's supposed to be a rather warm New Year here in New York, which is good because last weekend it was extremely cold. Now it's very warm. So we'll see what happens. And thank you for all you do. And we'll definitely speak with you next week.
Thanks.
All right, and that was Rob Maraska here, our longest tenured analyst. And we're now joined by one of the guys here who's going to speak all things related here to the NFL. And you hear him, of course, on Sportswire Radio, sportnarium.com/play with the Talking Rivals. And also you hear him with the Lift-Off Jets, which will be playing this weekend. And that is Chris Pizzea, also with us here at New Jersey Devils fan, but also host of the Baseball Banter Show, which we've played here throughout the last several days. And that is Justin Gianelli. Will be joined here by the brute force Brad Weiss very shortly. But gentlemen, Happy New Year. Hope you and your families had a very good Christmas and whatever else you may celebrate. And how you guys doing here tonight?
Very good, Tom. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Right. I'm doing good.
Fantastic. Very good stuff. A lot to get into here when it comes to the world of the NFL, and we'll pick our games here shortly, but wanted to go over the news here first very quickly. I know we'll touch upon it in the Broncos-Chiefs game we pick, but the Denver Broncos are going to be looking for a new head coach, as their head coach is no longer there after a 4-11 season for the team. And what do you guys make of it? I'll go with Justin first. He's nodding his head, and give me your thoughts here on the developments that the Denver Broncos will be looking for a new head coach.
I'm a little surprised that this was done in season, but you kind of knew the writing was on the wall with the new ownership coming in, and you knew early on, like, Nathaniel Hackett was not cut out to be an NFL head coach. And we saw right from the Seattle game where he mismanaged the timeouts, and he was getting ripped He was getting ripped to shreds every single week for like the first month of the year, and it really it screamed of one and done. And it's a perfect segue with the new ownership. We'll see about George Patton, the general manager, if he survives the season as well, because I think it could be a whole new regime in Denver coming off this disastrous season. The other question this team has to answer is Russell Wilson salvageable? I don't know the answer to that. And he's not getting any younger. And I really think that the Broncos have an issue here. They obviously are going to need a coach who knows what he's doing, first of all, but B, somebody who's going to be able to potentially revive Russell Wilson because of the fact that they already paid him this massive contract and they're on the hook for a ton of money. I mean, I'm not sure why. I mean, maybe it was almost like a handshake agreement when they made the trade. When they acquired Russell Wilson, it was almost like a handshake agreement with Russell that they'll pay him before the season. But they should have never paid him. They should have let the season play out and went into this offseason because he would have had another year on the contract. He would have had next season. But, at this point, you committed to him long term and you're seeing it's already a disaster. So I don't know how they're going to either dig themselves out of this or get somebody who might be able to revive Russell Wilson after such a horrendous year.
Well, we'll certainly find out. We're also joined here, of course, by the brute force Brad Weiss, who knows a thing or two about coaching and some success. Unlike the Denver Broncos, he is the head coach of our Plainview JFK boys JV basketball team. We'll get to the brute force in a second. But Chris, Denver Broncos, I had high expectations for this team. I remember last year at this time, you told us, I think a lot of people felt really good about this team. I heard you and Sharman speak about them as well. And, I mean, where do the Denver Broncos go from here?
Obviously, a new coach. I did read a small article that Sean Payton was heading back to New Orleans, but I thought he would have been perfect to go to Denver because Denver, outside of Russell Wilson, that's a pretty good team. There's a lot of talent on that team. So it is a team that a coach would like to go to, and possibly another GM, because there is a lot of talent there. So, but the problem is you're stuck with Russell Wilson. You can't trade this guy, obviously, because nobody wants him. That contract, it's got a lot of dead cap, so you can't even move it for about 3 years. So you're going to need a head coach to come in, an offensive guy to come in and straighten him out, and also just to get the team back on track, because obviously there's a problem. Shannon Sharp said in an interview that Russell Wilson's got his own office, he's got his own parking spot, so there's
that reminds me in wrestling when WCW, and I won't go too much into a wrestling rant, I'm joined by C2K, of course, Wednesday's guest, the legendary pro wrestling world champion, but there was, when WCW had folded, one of the reasons they had folded was the top talent had their own locker rooms, and they were basically kind of like in their own bubble. So when you have a star player already, and Brad will attest to this, that has their own kind of setup, their own desk, their own arrangement, and you're not with the team, you don't have that vibe, it ain't going to work, especially when you're the quarterback.
Right, so
it's not going to work.
You need not only a coach that's going to be able to mold, or fix Russell Wilson, whatever you're going to do, but also to fix the team and to get the team playing together as a team. And I'm sure Brute Force will come in and definitely, talk more into that aspect of this, because that's going to be the bigger problem, because now you got one guy who the whole team despises, and you can't get rid of that guy. It would have been easy if you could just get rid of him. It's all right, you know what? And just move on from him. But you just can't. It's just financially, it doesn't make sense for them. So they're kind of stuck with Russell Wilson. So they got to get a coach in here to not only fix Russell Wilson, but fix the team to say, okay, he's our guy, and we got to start playing together as a team, or else we're not going to win. And
how about the fight on the sidelines? How about the fight on the sidelines on Sunday?
Yeah, that's even right. He's not even going to be there.
The locker room's broken.
Oh, they're definitely broken, and some here. And again, we'll certainly, I'm sure, cover all of those developments here on Sportswire Radio after the season here, when you get all the exit interviews and what coach is fired. And we'll maybe speculate some of that on next week's show, as we'll do a show similar to this in almost all NFL. And the Brew Force, good to be with you. Happy New Year to you and yours and your wonderful family. But, I mean, I know it's tough. You've been through this at SJC when Kevin Spann, who started out as the coach there, and a lot of high hopes, and similar to the Broncos, unfortunately, the first year you guys do okay, and then those next 2 years wasn't what we had hoped for, and then you come in with a new coach, and Nathaniel Hackett again. Expectations are high there. It's a franchise that's won 3 Super Bowls. It's been there in 4 other times and hasn't been to the postseason for a while. And you think about the Broncos, they've been really one of the more successful NFL franchises since the AFL-NFL merger. So it's a franchise that's really not used to not being in the postseason for a while. So, I mean, as somebody like yourself who now is in the coaching game and kind of knows this rodeo, I mean, where do you see the Denver Broncos going from here with Nathaniel Hackett and the Broncos obviously parting ways here after a very tumultuous season, to put it kindly?
Yeah, I think the Denver Broncos are definitely in trouble. And it's not good, and the guys mentioned reasons why. When your locker room breaks apart as bad as it has, that's very hard to recover from for any team. Obviously, like you guys said, I've been in locker rooms with a lot of losing. Expectations were there, and that losing occurred. And the locker room was never able to come back together and really be successful for a few years, as Tom alluded to. So it is not easy. I think the Broncos made a horrifyingly terrible mistake this season by keeping Nathaniel Hackett as long as they did. He was not the voice. He was not the guy to lead this team. And it was pretty evident from early on in the season. And, to keep him as long as they did, they basically let this thing get very turbulent. And again, I'm a coach who would advocate for coaches to stay with their jobs. But in this situation, you could just tell that the team just wasn't responding to not only Russell Wilson, but obviously Nathaniel Hackett. And when things happen like this, it starts with your leadership at the top, which is your coach. And if your coach doesn't have control and your coach is not doing the right things, then this is what happens. And I think that it's starting there. Obviously, Russell Wilson's play is bad. And like you guys said, the Broncos are also at fault for all those reasons you mentioned. You don't give a guy who hasn't done anything in your building, private office, private this, private that.
That's bizarre. Listen, that's such a bizarre. Like I said, I had mentioned in wrestling, in WCW, you had all those guys. They had their own locker rooms. They had you can't do that in sports, especially in football. You can't.
Yeah, and listen, he's new to your organization. I know he's had a successful career in Seattle, but he's new. He's got to prove himself just like everybody else.
He won 1 Super Bowl, not 5. If he was Tom Brady, maybe I would have said okay, but he got one only Super Bowl. That's it, one win.
I mean, listen, it was obviously, some butt kissing and also, also desperation because they just didn't have a great quarterback for many years. And they thought, oh, we got the guy and now we're going to treat him amazing. Right. But again, you don't do that until the guy proves it. And in the end, they just didn't do that. They didn't do a good job with the coaching hire either. And in the end, it's now a disaster that someone has to fix. And who is that someone? Because I know Chris is mentioning Sean Payton. He ain't going to the Broncos. Okay. And listen, I don't really think that there's any other name out there you could go, oh, well, he'll do it or he'll do it. Okay. Ultimately, they have a lot of work to do in Denver. They got a lot of displeased players. And ultimately, I could also see, Tom, some of these players we're talking about on the roster not wanting to be there anymore and wanting to get traded and wanting to leave Denver. And I think this could be very turbulent, especially since they're in a division that already features the Chiefs, right? The Chargers, who I know, are ascending. They had a lot of injuries this year, which kind of
the Chargers are in the playoffs. Chargers were able to find a way this year. They finally got over the hurdle.
Credit to them. They had a lot of injuries. They had some, adversity to deal with, and they still found a way to make the playoffs. They have the Raiders, who are also in a situation like the Broncos. So, those two teams are kind of, you don't know what's going to happen now. The one thing that's different between the Raiders and the Broncos is that who the coach of the Raiders is going to be the next few years because they have to keep him. Okay, and the Broncos, we don't know. So ultimately, it's a question mark, but I think both of those teams are in major trouble. I would say the Broncos are in a lot more than the Raiders, though.
I think the Broncos are in much more trouble, but we'll certainly talk about that after the season. I have a bunch of comments. Let me try to get to everybody. Of course, our friend Anthony J. Finkel here, and I'll get to Justin's comment later on about LeBron James. Also, happy birthday to LeBron James. I'll make sure to bring that up. Missed you, boys. Happy New Year. Yep, Happy New Year to you, Anthony Finkel. Are you out on a boat somewhere in Florida? Are you keeping it low-key in Brooklyn this year? Or what are you doing? I'd be so curious on Anthony Finkel's New Year's plans. The last ride of 2022, absolutely. Carlos Otoro Chavez, the second from the Mad New Yorker show, says, Broncos' biggest issue was the transition of ownership was terrible. Broncos had a young group and then began to sell it off. I mean, We'll figure that out. Anthony Finkel says, I couldn't believe he had his own private office. That means he asked for that in his contract negotiation. That's a good point. That's a good point because when I think,
negotiated.
That's a good
point. Happening, that's 100% brought up.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and it certainly reminds me of, again, in WCW, guys asked for certain things. I mean, I remember Hogan asking for his own dressing room, but that's here nor there. Carlos also says Russell Wilson will be okay. Broncos, though, need an O-line and a running back. Well, they're going to get a high pick in the draft.
You know what? Tom, I'm going to counter you. I'm going to counter you real quick by saying the Raiders aren't in as much trouble as the.
Well, Brad said that. I didn't say that. That was Brad Weiss.
Oh, well, I'll counter Brad's point.
In 2 minutes on that, I got to go right to games.
I will counter Brad's point and said, whether you like him or not, you know who the Broncos quarterback is. You don't know who the Raiders quarterback is going forward.
Right. It's not going to be Carr.
No,
but you got a wide receiver and a running back, though. You do have weapons there. That would be
I don't know if Monte Adams is coming back.
But you got Josh Jacobs. You had a big year.
He's a free agent, isn't he, Jacobs?
You know, he might be.
Right? This was his fourth. Well, they could tag him or give him the 5th-year. Oh no, wait. They turned down the 5th-year option, so he's going to be a free agent. I mean, I guess they could tag him. I don't know if they're going to tag a running back, but I personally, when you look
in the last year of a guaranteed contract, the crack staff has given us that he is in the last year of a guaranteed contract.
When you look at both teams, I would rather be on the Bronco. You know, I'd rather, if I'm a coach, not that they need a new coach yet, but I would rather take the Broncos because I could say, all right, if I could fix Russell Wilson and, you know, kind of put together this offensive line again, you know what? The defense was number one up until 2 weeks ago. They were the number one.
Yeah, they were the defense. They were
a real pot of gold at the end of the rainbow if you could fix Russell Wilson.
Right. Exactly.
There is nothing but darkness if you're the Raiders right now.
I think you guys.
I'm sorry, and there's also no first-round picks the next 2 years, right? Because they use that to trade.
For trading for Devontae Adams.
Right. No. I'm talking about Denver. Trading for Russell Wilson, right?
Well, that's true.
Didn't they trade a bunch of picks? I forgot exactly how many.
I think 2 ones.
All right, well, we'll certainly talk about all of that here. I got a few more comments. Let me try to work Carlos back in here. Also, Carlos says, D'Amico, Ryans, Harbaugh, and Quinn being on the list of coaches. Yeah, I don't know about Harbaugh. I don't know about Harbaugh.
Hot name.
Yeah, I would take Ryans in a heartbeat right now.
Well, Ryan's definitely. Quinn, maybe.
Quinn,
I don't know.
Maybe.
He's got the resume, but
you know what? Harbaugh is the type of guy that would come in and fix that situation. I don't know if he's going to be the guy that's going to fix Russell Wilson, but he'll fix the team. You know the vibe around the team.
Spot for Jim Harbaugh.
And listen, but you know what? And if Harbaugh wins this week, and if he wins the national championship, he's definitely gone because there's nothing else for him to do.
Right. That's a fair point. That's certainly a fair point here. And we are on Sportswire Radio, and we are speaking all things related here to the NFL with the gang here. Chris Pizzea from the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, and, of course, the Brute Force Brad Weiss, the legendary Brute Force from our SJLI Golden Eagles and the boys. I watched the game, and I kind of felt a little bad for my alma mater, the John Jay College Bloodhounds. Obviously, we're Golden Eagles fans here, the Brute Force, and I was speaking with the guys about the big one. We'll talk about that at the end of the show because I don't know how much of the game you watched, but I watched the entire game, and we had some friends of the show who finally got to play, but we'll talk about all that later on here. But we have a lot of games to pick, and I want to go straight to it. And the Brute Force Brad Weiss, I'm so curious about this because I had John Gonzalez messaging me throughout the week. Of course, John is with the Sports Authorities group, and we love John Gonzalez here, and he's hanging on by a thread, and I was curious now on where are we in our standings here when it comes to the picks. And I know Anthony Finkel was kind of hanging on here, the napkin Anthony Finkel. And tell us how much John Gonzalez is leading now.
We're going to need Brad to read that. He cannot.
Yeah, I'm going to read it because I know that
so give us the numbers.
15 minutes to finally adjust itself, but whatever. All right, but listen, so John Gonzalez is still in the lead. He's got 144 wins. But Anthony Finkel is now 2 games behind. He got a game on John Gonzalez, so it's now 144 to 142. So
we gained a game last week.
Anthony Finkel is definitely in the mix to win this thing. Now, unfortunately, me and Chris fell down a little bit more. And what has happened now is that me and Chris are now only 1 game ahead of Tom Bryce, who's now pushing for third
Well,
face.
I'll tell you what, and I spoke about this with John Gonzalez, and I'm going to explain because the last few weeks I've watched so much football. That's one advantage of being sick. The beginning of the season, because I was working on other things, namely a New York political campaign, I wasn't watching as much football. The last 6 weeks, I think especially the last 3 or 4, my record has been much improved because I know everything what's going on. I know all the stats, the numbers. I'm into it. So I've improved, but I have no shot. I'm not winning this year.
No, but you know what? There's something for coming from like 6th to 7th to 3rd. So that's definitely something you could do, Tom, because you're only one game behind me and Chris. So definitely some rough times for me and Chris right now. But listen, there's still a chance. But I'm rooting for Big Fink. I know John Gonzalez is going to get on me, but I'm rooting for Big Fink to come back and win this thing.
And how many games are you and Chris back? Are you 10 games back at this point?
10 games behind. Yeah, 10 games.
Oh, well. All right, well, you know what? I mean, Anthony Finkel, well, here's my prediction. You ready? Before we pick these games, I'm going to go the dumbest team. We always say the Falcons first, Cardinals, Falcons. I want to go to a game that doesn't have anything to play
we
for.
Have to pick this. Can we just –
Well, we can go quick. We can go shotgun on them. We will go shotgun on the games that mean nothing. But I will say, here's my prediction. I said this to John Gonzalez, and Anthony Finkel is going to kill me, but I think John Gonzalez is going to win this by 1 game over Anthony Finkel. That's my prediction, by 1 game. That's what I think. And what happens if it's a tie, by the way? What happens if these two guys are in a tie, by the way? Do we have a tiebreaker stipulation?
The playoffs. The playoffs could be the
game. Yeah, playoff game. So.
All right, well, you know what? That could be something interesting here. We'll have to figure that all out.
Or a steel cage match. It's one or the other.
Ooh, well, I can help you. That I can help you in. I can help you in a steel cage match. Believe me.
I know. You'd be great promoter for it. You would be great.
Well, I should say this before we go to football. I actually just got, and I won't say his name, I got a wrestler actually signed to another company that we do work with on Sportzwire. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but I can tell you that I can help you in wrestling. So maybe we'll talk about that another time. But the Brute Force Brad Weiss, let's go to it. And what's good about this week is we're all Sunday games. All Sunday, then the Monday night game. So we'll do this chronologically. Jets and Giants will be at the end. But the Brute Force, let's go first with one of your much beloved teams over the past few years. That is the Atlanta Falcons here against the Arizona Cardinals. And this might be the most boringest game of the week. Might be one of them. And the Falcons here I have are 5.5-point favorites. I have, depending on who you have it here, it's 41 is the over-under. It might be 40.5 depending on who you're looking at here on sites. But the Brute Force, I'll go very quickly. Both of these teams are eliminated. We watched the Cardinals yet again on prime time, and just what a lousy game to watch. And the Falcons didn't really bother to show up last week. And one of these teams, I guess, is playing for something here more than the other, which is draft position. Somebody has to win here, the Brute Force. And who do you think it is on one of your favorite teams, the Atlanta Falcons or the hapless Arizona Cardinals? So there you go. I see it. Right off the jugular here tonight.
Right off the jump, Tom Bryce. We're going to get the alarm working here, all right? You said, I cannot believe that you just said that the Falcons are 5.5-point favorites. What have the Falcons done to earn any favoritism, number one? Right. And number two, by that much? I mean, that's insane, all right? Because, listen, Desmond Ridder hasn't exactly shown us anything, all right? I actually like what I've seen more from Trace McSorley, who actually almost won them the game last week.
They should have won the game. They were up 10 points in the fourth quarter. They should have won the game.
I was pissed off because I was the only one that picked the Cardinals, and I was this close to getting a game on John Gonzalez.
I was speaking about that. We were actually.
You want me to break the news to you?
Go ahead.
Oh, no.
They're starting David Blau.
I'll still play David Blau. Listen, you know what? I'm glad you said that, Justin, because you know what David Blau is? A former Detroit Lion quarterback. I'll go with him.
That is
true.
All right,
listen, I'll go with him. All right, over Desmond Ridder, because the Falcons have not impressed me. Okay, if I were a betting fan and I was taking spreads here, I would definitely take the Cardinals with the spread. There is no way they're winning by a touchdown. All right, even if the Falcons do win, they will not win by that much. But I don't think they're going to win. I think the Cardinals will win. They have more weapons, I believe, than the Falcons right now. And the Falcons, like you said, Tom, they look like they quit last week. I mean, at least the Cardinals showed some fight. It wasn't pretty, but at least they showed something. The Falcons look like they're headed for the Bahamas at this point.
And we are joined, by the way, by the man who is in first place. He is the man of the Sports Authorities group. His name is John Gonzalez. And, of course, you can follow John and his wonderful group, which has over 3,700 members strong at the Sports Authorities. And John Gonzalez and Anthony Finkel is certainly the race of the ages. I don't know if it's quite, let's say, 78 Yankees Red Sox, but we'll figure that out, I'm sure. And Justin, Falcons Cardinals here, two teams that have nothing to play for. They're almost in the same spot. Somebody has to win here. I think Brad makes a great point to his point that it's kind of a surprise the Falcons are 5.5-point favorites, but somebody has to win. And what's your thoughts here on this matchup?
Actually, I think the line's a little bit low, to be honest with you. I thought it was. I actually would have thought 7.5. I mean, if you just look at who's playing quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals, I mean they're almost about as hopeless as it gets right now, and they're a team that is ready for the offseason. I know they played well against a bad Buccaneers team on Sunday night.
Oh my God!
But you know what? But their biggest mistake with Cliff Kingsbury's biggest mistake, unless there's an injury we don't know about, is not starting Trace McSorley, because McSorley did show you something. David Blau is about to be taken out to the shed in this game. I mean, and they're going to be able to run the ball with Tyler Algier. I think he's one of my favorite players in this matchup, who's been a tremendous running back for the Falcons in his rookie season. You do need to see a little bit more from Desmond Ridder, but I think the Falcons defense is going to have a field day here. So I think this is a pretty comfortable Falcons victory.
All right, well, we'll certainly find out here, and I have some more comments. I'll get to them in a second. But, Chris, Cardinals, Falcons, Cardinals certainly have been a disappointment here. Falcons, I guess, kind of where they usually are here at this point the last few years. But Falcons are at home. Somebody has to win. Does Brad make a point or does Justin make a point? But what's your thoughts here in this matchup between two hapless teams?
I was just flipping a coin before, so I'm going to go with. I don't know. This is a game
some
I
of these
would
games,
not.
I will say, some of them this week you might just have to flip a coin. There's a couple of them.
This is one. Really, I don't know why. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to start David Blau anyway. See what this kid could do again, second week in a row. Maybe, I don't know. But I'm going to go with Atlanta, just because I think they're a little bit better team. Maybe Arizona wants to win because J.J. Watt announced his retirement, and maybe they want to go out with a couple of wins for him, but I don't think they can with a fourth-string quarterback now. So I'll go with Atlanta. I don't know if they'll cover, but I'll go with Atlanta.
All right, let me get to some comments here. We don't have Anthony Finkel and who he's picked, the napkin guy here. I guess he's in his own bubble. It figures the brute force would root against me, but I've begun the season in first place from the beginning, and I will finish where I began on top. I guess, was this a wire-to-wire season so far for John Gonzalez? Has he been in first every week?
No.
Okay. From the beginning. I just want to make sure.
Chris Brazea was in first place for a while.
Yeah,
I
I just want to make sure. I'm asking for statistical purposes. He also says here, I ain't losing to some damn napkin. Also, Barbara Walters passed away. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. I'm sorry to hear about Barbara Walters. Of course, the 2020 host and also the creator, I believe, of The View. Pele passed. Yes, my condolences to Pele. I think I mentioned that earlier on the air, but John Gonzalez, who do you got here in this matchup and all these other people here that are with us? I'm curious about that. While I wait for these guys, it's a flip a coin matchup, but I think I'm going to give a small edge to Atlanta just because I think they're at home, 1 o'clock game, and the way that the Cardinals played against the Buccaneers, a bad Buccaneers team, to lose that game. I mean, it's hard for me to bet on a team like the Cardinals that should have really won a game last week against just a really bad Buccaneers team. I mean, they're in first place, but very flawed. And even the last few games I've seen them, because the Cardinals have been in prime time more than I could count, unfortunately, this season. And they hopefully next season that changes. But I think Atlanta wins here. I would bet to say it's the under here as a bonus, but I think Atlanta wins maybe by 10. And Carlos has got a funny one. I guess Carlos is going with a tie. He thinks there's going to be a tie, 14-14. So we'll see about that. We've had some ties this year. So John Gonzalez likes the Atlanta Falcons. No surprise. I think most people will pick the Falcons. I just wasn't so sure I want to make this 5.5 point. All right, so very well there. the Brute Force. Let's go to a matchup, though, that means a little bit more here in the 1 o'clock hour. And I guess this will be really a topsy-turvy matchup because there are two teams, I guess, that don't quite have quarterbacks, although maybe one of them that has a quarterback, maybe they should be favored. I don't even know why I'm saying this, but it's two struggling teams. That's the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. Dolphins are starting Teddy Bridgewater here this week, who's had some success at times, and the Patriots, obviously, their last few weeks, their situation speaks for itself, and Patriots here are small favorites. We're talking very small favorites, 2.5. I have, I guess, 40.5 or 41, depending on who you go with when it comes to your site for the over-under. And Dolphins do win, and a Jets loss. Let's hope that's not the case. The Dolphins will actually clinch a playoff spot, and the Patriots are hanging on here. I don't really see much in them as to why they should be in the postseason, but there is something on the line here, the Brute Force, and I mean, who do you like here? I mean, really, the Dolphins have disappointed me. Obviously, the news about Tua is also a big disappointment. Maybe Teddy Bridgewater gives him something. I don't know. Patriots showed something last week, down 22 and coming back, but yet they lose. And obviously, the Raiders game, we spoke about that. So somebody you think has to win. And who do you think comes away with the W here, the Brute Force?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the team that's more accustomed to playing at home and in their stadium in the cold weather, and I think that's the Patriots. I think the Patriots.
It's not going to be that cold though on Sunday. It's the 50s this weekend. It's not last weekend. The Brute Force. This is 50s.
But listen, I still think that it's New England. It's a tough place to play. Miami. I know Miami's had their number. No, it's one thing that Miami's done well is they've played New England well over the years, but I don't think they're going to win this game. I think there's a serious threat, and again, I don't wish this on anyone. Okay, but I think there's a serious threat that Teddy Bridgewater gets hurt in this game, just because he seems to always get hurt. Okay,
Matthew Jordan, maybe he has a big game,
and they're going to put a ton of pressure on him. So I think that with all that being said, I think that's going to be a issue, and I think that the Patriots, I know they're struggling. I know Mac Jones hasn't been great. I know the fans are cheering for him to be no longer the starter and the backup to come in.
He's going into Zach Wilson territory almost.
I know, but I think that he'll do enough. But I don't think this game's going to be won by the Patriots offense. I think it's going to be won by the Patriots defense. I think that's going to be the difference in this game. They're going to turn Miami over a few times with Teddy Bridgewater, and I think that's why they'll win. Give me a low-scoring game. I think, Tom, what was the over-under? I think it's
40.5 or 41, depending on who you are.
I would go under. I think this will be a low-scoring game, and I think that'll favor the Patriots, and that's why they'll win.
All right, fair enough here, and I have some people that have commented, but we'll save it as we always do. And Justin, certainly for Jet fans here, we're hoping and praying, as oddly as it sounds, for a Patriots win, as we still are alive, but these two teams are struggling. Dolphins have lost their last 4 games and blow a 20-10 lead against the Packers last week and looked really lethargic, but we kind of know why, as to why they looked the way they did with the 2 concussions. And the Patriots, the last 2 weeks, definitely found ways to lose that teams that should be in the postseason would not lose. But somebody has to win here, a lot in the line for us. And what's your thoughts here on almost a pick-your-poison matchup for Jet fans here?
So let me clarify. If you're a Jet fan, you're rooting heavily for the Miami Dolphins because you want that Patriots to get their 9th loss. And that means if the Jets beat Seattle, it's winning in for the winner of Jets-Dolphins next week.
Right.
You want the Dolphins to win. And I'll tell you, I'm gonna be straight up about it. The Pats suck. What do they do well? Barely anything. Their defense is okay. Their defense is not great. I don't see where they have an answer for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, even with Teddy Bridgewater back there. I know he's an injury-prone quarterback, but one of the luxuries the Miami Dolphins have is a quarterback who can come in there and play a calm style of football, right? And you're gonna be able to run the ball. You're gonna be able to run the ball with Raheem Mostert. I actually like to see Mike Gesicki get a little bit more involved. I feel like he's been one of the most underused tight ends in all of football, and the Patriots' offense is just It's vomit worthy how bad they are. I mean, they are just. Mac Jones is not the guy. You talk about some bad quarterbacks from the 2021 draft class. Oh boy, it's not good. I don't see the Patriots winning this game, and they've been lousy at home this year. They're just 3-4. So
well, they're 7-8. So I mean, the record's what it is. I mean,
the Dolphins.
All right. Maybe the Dolphins do bounce back. We'll find out. I mean, Chris, it's kind of as a Jet fan, I guess it is a pick your poison matchup. I guess to an extent, Justin makes a point, but obviously somebody has to win. Dolphins are coming off 4 straight losses. Patriots have lost back-to-back games. Somebody has to win. And what do you think here?
Yeah, Miami always played, not always, but the last couple of years, Miami has played New England very tough, and I think they've gotten
beat them last year, last game of the season.
Yeah, and this year they beat them already. I think they've won their last 4 against New England. So,
well, even with Brady, I think Brady had a losing record against Miami.
It might be. I know they've always had a problem with them for some reason.
Yeah.
But I do like Miami in this game to beat New England. Like Justin said, their offense is it's just a complete mess. And their defense, it's going to keep them in the game. So I think it's going to be a blowout by any stretch. It'll probably be a close game.
Yeah.
So, but I think Miami will pull it out.
All right, fair enough here. And I do have a few comments here. Let me get to them. First here is John Gonzalez. He likes the New England Patriots. And I'm wondering here where Anthony Finkel is. This napkin guy who's, again, I think it would be pure luck if he wins. But clearly he's not here picking games. I guess he's got better things to do. I mean, we'd be so seasoned of NFL if Anthony Finkel beats John Gonzalez, a guy who, has got other things going on in his mind. But we have here another comment from John, and I do get the news about Barbara Walters. Condolences to all her fans. 93. Low-scoring game, but Miami has been sliding downhill in a hurry, and the weather favors the Patriots. Yeah, but the weather's supposed to be in the 50s.
You see, he's just repeating my statements. He's repeating my statements.
I am going with the Miami Dolphins. I don't know why, but the last 2 weeks, what I've seen from New England, and I know Miami, the way they played in the second half, but I kind of had this conversation with somebody yesterday morning, and this shaped my opinion on why to go with Miami. Teddy Bridgewater is more competent than Mac Jones. He's more competent than other quarterbacks right now who are starting in this league, and I kind of think he'll do enough to win, and call me crazy, but the way New England's played these last 2 weeks, I mean, it's hard for me to bet for them. So I think here New England is going to lose here at home yet again, and that would be 3-5 this season at home. So definitely a very disappointing season for them. Unusual 3-5 for the Patriots, but I think Miami finds a way here to get it done, and begrudgingly for Jets fans, I guess we're picking Miami, but we'll figure that out in a little while here. But the Brute Force, let's go to another 1 o'clock game, which has got, I guess, some significance here. I'm going to wait for the Lions till last in the 1 o'clock hour, but let's go with the Washington Commanders and the Cleveland Browns. The 7-1 Washington Commanders, who the last 2 weeks have come back to earth a little bit, and the Cleveland Browns, who we all seem confident we're going to come away with a victory, but lost, and they pretty much here are going to be on the outside looking in and going to the golf course in 2 weeks from now. Commanders here definitely need a win here to keep their playoff hopes alive and get into the postseason. I have the Commanders here as 2.5-point favorites. I believe I have the over-under at 40, unless I'm missing something here on the over-under. We'll have the crack staff check that in a second. But the Brute Force, both teams are kind of coming in here slumping a little bit. Washington's kind of having this quarterback yo-yo effect, and they got to figure it out here. Otherwise, they will be on the outside looking in. And who do you think comes away here with a win?
To be honest with you, I kind of want to take the Chris Pizzea route and flip a coin. Because listen, at first, if it was Heineke, I was going to be pretty confident in the Commanders winning this game. I have no idea what they're doing going back to Wentz. I think this is a horrific decision by the Commanders. Because what has Carson Wentz proven to you that he could do late in the season? Didn't he prove to you last year that he could win games when they mattered, when they needed games? And now you put him back in this situation after weeks of not playing? I think it's a pathetic decision. So, at first I was confident in the Commanders, but you know what? Because at this point I have nothing to lose and I need games on John Gonzalez just to get third place. You know what? Let me do it, because I'm just going to do it right now. Let me take the Cleveland Browns, all right? And I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns. Why? Because I think that Carson Wentz might have more interceptions, all right, then the Browns will have touchdowns. The Browns might have more touchdowns than his interceptions, so they'll be kind of the same. I think they might have 3 touchdowns, right, and Carson Wentz will have 3 interceptions. So I think that with Carson Wentz, this is the reason why I'm sort of switching over. I'm not confident in it, but again, I'm not confident in Carson Wentz. And this is, to me, a pathetic decision. Jake Subban should be ashamed of himself. All the Commanders
he doesn't work for that team in that capacity. How could you say that?
I know he doesn't, but
happy belated birthday to the Subban brothers. You forgot to wish them
happy birthday. So I should be nice to say happy birthday.
You should be nice. We've had them on the show, and you were lucky they didn't tag team on us 2 years ago, and they came on.
but what I will say is, come on, like Commander Carson is back. Really? Commander Carson. Come on. Bad decision.
Commander Carson.
All right. And a side point here. Were you a Cub Scout, the Brew Force? Because John Gonzalez is implying that you were a Cub Scout at one point.
No, I don't know where
you
he
didn't
got
look like a Cub Scout. You didn't look like a Cub Scout at all. All right. So fair enough here. Enough about the Cub Scout talk. But, Chris, Browns and Commanders, somebody, I guess, has to win here. Commanders desperately need the win. It is 40.5, I see, is the over-under. Commanders are 2.5-point favorites. Brad makes some points. I don't know about Cleveland's quarterback situation either with Deshaun Watson. Wentz and Watson, flip a coin. Another one of these flip a coins. Commanders need the win more as they're trying to return to the postseason. But who do you think wins here?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go with Washington only because they needed more. Like you said, they're right now in the playoffs, so they need to keep winning because you got Brute's Detroit Lions right behind them. So
we're going to get to them. Don't you worry.
Right. If they lose, Detroit's going to take them right over. So Washington has to keep winning. So I'm gonna say Washington.
All right. Well, certainly not much else there to add. I know it's one of these matchups, but Justin, the Commanders, a couple weeks ago, they looked like John Gonzalez and I were having a conversation off air, and they were like, they're a dangerous team. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to beat the Giants. They're going to get these games. They're going to be, for sure, locked into a postseason spot, and yet here they are, and they're in trouble. And then you've got the Browns, who have had kind of a Cleveland Browns type of season here of note. And, somebody here has to win. Commanders are very small favorites here. It's probably going to be a game similar to a lot of games here this week, whether it's the Giants and Colts game, Cardinals-Falcons. There's a number of games I'm looking at that are probably going to be the same type of ugly type of late season football games. My beloved Steelers are going to be a similar game to this, I'm sure, later on. But we'll get to all that. But, Justin, who do you think wins here, the Browns or for now, in the last spot in the NFC playoffs, the Washington Commanders?
Yeah, I'm not going to be as brash as Brad about the benching of Taylor Heineke for Carson Wentz. I kind of understand it. Not that I agree with it. I kind of understand it. Heineke really has struggled over the last couple of weeks. So, it's a last gasp. Any kind of spark is kind of what Ron Rivera is doing right now. But Carson Wentz doesn't provide you anything. I agree with Brad in the sense that I think the Browns are going to win this game. I think they'll be able to run the ball. With Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And I think, obviously, the more that Deshaun Watson gets comfortable in this Brown system, I think the more it's going to benefit him. And I do see him taking a nice next step this week and leading the Browns towards victory. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a close game. But, I do think the Browns are the better football team. And I'll tell you right now, There's one quarterback lurking right now, and he's ready to steal that. And he's ready to steal that last playoff spot.
I'm getting to him. I know you're talking about
that one later.
We're gonna get to him. And I think I referred to it last week on the air, and he had made a prediction, and I have a feeling that prediction will come true. But I'll get to John Gonzalez here because the napkin Anthony Finkel, I guess, is going to be one of those guys he's picking his games probably on a napkin somewhere in a beach, is my guess, the Brew Force. So we're going to find out here when he picks those games, I'm sure, at like 12:59 p.m. on Sunday. I know how Anthony Finkel is. Trust me, I know him. Great guy, though, but one of our biggest supporters, and, of course, DPH Property Maintenance, and we love them and everything else. But John Gonzalez likes the Washington Commanders. John also says the Brew Force gave you one. So he gave you one here, the Brew Force. So he felt he was in the holiday spirit.
Thanks, John. Much appreciated.
And John also says he blames you for the Lions being jinxed last week. I don't know about that. I just pray the Lions get back on track. We've got the Bears, so we should be able to, but I'll get to them in a little while here. I mean, again, another one of these eeny, meeny, miny, mo matchups. I do think that Washington overall has played better football than the Browns in the second half, and I still think at the end of the day, whether it's Heineke or Wentz, I think Washington for now is the better football team. I think they have the better coach. I think they have the slightly better defense, and I think you could still make the argument that Washington could have at least tied or beat the Giants due to some officiating 2 weeks ago. And I kind of think that for whatever reason, Washington will win this game because I think Washington needs to have this game because next week I think they're probably not going to win. So this is kind of as must win as a game you're going to get for Washington. So I do think that Washington wins. Bonus, I think it's another one of these unders. I think it's going to be an under game because both of these teams play that kind of ugly football that you used to here late in the year. So I'm going to say Commanders 20, Browns 10. I'm going to say that here. And maybe it'll be different. But the Brute Force, let's go to another matchup here that doesn't have as much on the line. And let's come back to the Denver Broncos we spoke about a little while ago. And the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs, 1 o'clock game here at Arrowhead. Boy, the Chiefs have really lucked out because I see they get big after big game that they get heavily favored of. The Seahawks was last week. The Texans, they basically hung on for dear life. And here they are here at Arrowhead again. They're 13-point favorites. I have 44.5 as the over-under, and the Broncos obviously are going to be on the golf course in 2 weeks from now, and the Chiefs are still holding out hope if they can get that top spot here in the AFC. And boy, it's going to be a lot to whoever gets that home field, that one spot in the AFC, especially between the Bills, the Bengals, and the Chiefs. Boy, that's going to be so exciting, and I'm looking forward to the Monday night game to pick here. But in the meantime, the Brute Force, do you want to go here? And you know what? Maybe after Denver has gotten rid of the coach and maybe after all we spoke about with Russell Wilson and the way they played, I was actually watching the Nickelodeon feed last Sunday, and maybe the guys get motivated, maybe with an interim coach, and guys kind of get fired up here, and Chiefs have nothing to play for, at least we think, when it comes to the AFC West, and maybe they slip up here and maybe say, you know what, we don't want the 1 seed this year. Would you like to, the Brute Force, start the New Year strong? Maybe get the New Year's resolutions out of the way. Maybe forget about 2022, not the season we hope for in picks. And would you want to go here and pick the Denver Broncos and kind of feel like a little frisky here, maybe?
You know, Tom, I should give you this trophy for that great sales pitch that you just gave.
That was pretty good.
Because ultimately, you did a great job of trying. But you'll never get me to do that on this one. All right, never. I wasn't even going to give you any analysis because you basically just said it all right there. The Chiefs have something to play for, okay, and that's why they're going to win this game. And the Broncos, I mean, they just got absolutely annihilated by Baker Mayfield.
Oh, my God, that game, listen, and the poor Nickelodeon telecast, I don't know if everybody listened to it, they were like, yeah, maybe the Broncos could come back. They were down like 25 in the third quarter. You're like, I know they're trying to sell football for little kids, but this game was over. That
was pathetic. So no way in heck do I take – I'm not even going to take them if they were playing well against the Chiefs on the road. I wasn't going to pick them then. So you want me to pick them now? No way. And that's,
yeah, I kind of did, actually. I kind of did.
And that spread, oh, yeah, give me that spread. They'll win by 2 touchdowns.
All right, but I will say this, though. The Chiefs with spreads – I mean, they didn't cover against the Texans, and I think they just covered against the Seahawks last week. I think they just covered, right, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, they haven't exactly been world beaters with these big spreads, but that's here nor there. We don't play for spreads. And, Chris, I mean, there isn't much more I can really say about this matchup. I tried with the Brute Force. So, Broncos, Chiefs, who you got?
You couldn't even sell this team, so I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
Yeah, okay, all right. I respect that.
They're going to win by, how about 3 scores?
All right. I'll give you that much. No, listen, I'll give you that much. I think I've got the idea. Justin, I'm sure I've got an idea on who you're going to pick. And give me your thoughts if you want to share any.
I've got the Broncos to cover.
No.
The Broncos.
All right.
The Broncos.
Actually, you know what? He ain't wrong on the cover.
The Chiefs have been absolute trash this year. They're 5-9-1 against the spread.
That's an excellent point.
They are absolute trash at covering these spreads. And if you remember the last matchup between these two teams, they had like a 27-0 lead or something like that. And the game ended up 34-27 because they got sloppy with it. Yep. Listen, they're going to have their feet up in the second half. They're going to win this game. The Chiefs aren't going to have any issues. It could be a 27-17 kind of game. And Denver just barely covers. But the Chiefs, they'll win. Obviously, the stakes are high. They want that number 1 seed. They want the bye. They want to make sure the AFC Championship game's at Arrowhead because you know that they're going to end up in it. So,
yep.
Give me the Chiefs here. They're going balls to the wall the next couple of weeks.
And before I get to John Gonzalez, I feel like Kansas City and Buffalo more than Cincinnati need that home field, that AFC Championship game in their building more so than Cincinnati, because I feel like Cincinnati the last 2 years have kind of been road warriors, whereas I feel like Buffalo and Kansas City, like I'm not so confident that they could win an AFC Championship game on the road.
I also feel like Highmark Stadium and Arrowhead provide bigger home field advantages than Paul Brown Stadium. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a franchise that hasn't had that many home playoff games in Arrowhead and Buffalo, and fair points here. And let's go with the John Gonzalez comments here. He says, Chiefs need no need for analysis. Even the brute will get this one right. Go ahead, Brute. Start the year off right. Pick the Broncos. He wanted you to pick the Broncos.
Jesus. Damn.
Don't feel sorry for Hackett. The Walton family already have him a new job as a greeter at a local Walmart. I guess that pays well, right? I mean, Walmart, they used to always famously say paid well. I don't know if that's true or not. My uncle used to live near a Walmart in Connecticut, and I always wondered about that. But that's here nor there. But, yeah, obviously I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs. Although I will make one point that Justin made. Chiefs haven't been great at covering because we go through these games each weekend, and I feel like, and he said it. You said 5-9-1. I would have thought
5-9-1 on the year.
I would have probably said 7-8, and because I thought about it each week on Sportswire, and they haven't covered all these games. But I do think they'll win. But I think it'll be one of these games where maybe they take out the starters in the second half, and they're up like 21 or 24, and maybe it goes to, like you said, like a 28-17 type of matchup and something like that. So I think that's going to be where it ends up. But definitely I think Kansas City will walk away with win. I believe now this is 6 consecutive seasons with 12-plus wins or more from the Chiefs. I mean, at least it's 5 seasons in a row. That's a very, very impressive stat. Not many teams are able to win that many games consistently. I think New England did it.
Best, man. He really is.
Yeah, New England did it. I think the 49ers, maybe they did it in the 80s or 90s. I know they won. I know they won 10 games in a row. It was 16 years in a row. So I would have thought they would have did it maybe the Raiders and the Steelers in one of those eras, but it's very few teams we're talking about here. But the Brute Force, let's go to another matchup here that I guess sort of has some implications, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. And this is an interesting matchup here because on paper, you'd say the Jaguars have a clear advantage here. But the Texans, the last several weeks, have played inspired football, you might say. They finally won in Tennessee, and they arguably should have beat teams like the Chiefs. Dallas, they definitely should have won that game. I mean, Dallas pulled a Houdini here. I think about the Eagles when they played them on Thursday night. They played them very tough. Giants, they played them tough at MetLife Stadium. And Texans are definitely playing for something. They're playing inspired football. You kind of have the sense here that this is going to be a good football game for whatever reason. Jaguars, though, are favored by a field goal. Jaguars control their own destiny now in the AFC South. And 43 is the over-under. And, I mean, what's your thoughts here? I mean, I'm not going to sell you on this because I actually think the Texans are playing good football here. And it's a young Jaguars team, even though they've played very well. Very good football in the second half. But who do you think comes away with the victory here?
Yeah, I think I know who I'm going to take to win the game, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars, because the Jaguars are playing good football. Obviously they have a lot to play for here, winning that division, obviously, and I think they will. But I was, until you told me, because I came into the day thinking, at least at my pick'em pool, that the Jaguars were a 6-point favorite, but now that they're only a 3-point favorite, I'm still going to take the Jaguars with the spread. I was going to take the Texans with the spread if it was 6 points, but it is not. So ultimately, I will take the Jaguars to win the game, and with the spread, I just think Trevor Lawrence is playing phenomenally with his weapons on offense. I think they're going to score a lot of points. And again, I'm giving a lot of credit to the Texans. First of all, I'm proud of them. I picked them last week, and they made me look good. So I'm proud of the Texans.
We both picked them, by the way. We actually both picked them. We did. That was good. That was a good one, Bruce was.
Yes, that's right. So I'm proud of the Texans in that sense. But, again, the Jaguars have something to play for. They're playing good. Some people were a little bit down on them because of their performance against the Jets, but I mean, that was a ugly, cold, rainy, disgusting game, and they still found a way to win and do what they had to do. So I think this week, in an obviously more friendly environment, they'll get back to what they've been doing, which is playing really good offense to win this game.
Well, we'll certainly find out here. And Chris, this is a really, really intriguing matchup here because on paper, you'd say Jacksonville clear in a way is the better team. But the Texans, I kind of feel like the last month have played a lot better than their record, and they deserved a couple of more wins than they should have. I know we don't give the participation trophies like Brad had out a few minutes ago, but I kind of feel like this is a tougher matchup to pick than it meets the eye. And certainly Jaguars have a lot on the line here. It's a young football team, haven't been in this spot. It's a Texans team they're playing inspired. I mean, this is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a matchup I'm actually really looking forward to watching. And who do you think wins here? And it's the first place Jacksonville Jaguars against the Houston Texans.
You know what? And you look back, the Texans have won their last 5 against Jacksonville, and they own the series like 28-13. They're 28-13 against Jacksonville. So you would think that should point towards the Texans, but you know what? Jacksonville's been playing so good the last few weeks. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, he looks like he's progressing the way us Jet fans thought Zach Wilson was going to be this year, but obviously not. Yeah, I'm going to take Jacksonville in a close game, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than some people think. You know, some people look at it as an easy victory. Jacksonville's in control for the division right now too. If they win out, they'll have the division.
Yep. Because
I'll
obviously, Jacksonville and Tennessee match up next week, and that could be maybe one of those Sunday night game candidates. That certainly stay tuned. That would be a game that could under the radar here. And Justin, Jaguars, certainly you look really good on picking the Jaguars as one of those teams that you thought. I think you even mentioned this on the Baseball Banter Show. You kind of mentioned it. You kind of tied into some things how you talked about the Jaguars, and they've definitely played really good football here in the second half, and Trevor Lawrence has looked very good here, and they've got a coach and they've got a team that's emerging and have some impressive wins on their resume. And certainly, if they certainly win here and next week, they are going to win the AFC South. But the Houston Texans have played good football here the last 3 or 4 weeks, and it's an interesting matchup here. And do the Jaguars find a way to win yet again and keep themselves in firm position of the AFC South, or do the Texans get another big win here and continue to play spoiler? I mean, what do you think?
I think the Jaguars here are certainly the better team, and the team I compared them to was the Detroit Tigers. I thought the Tigers were going to be the team that takes that next step to be a little bit better. But the Jaguars have really taken that next step, and it's really been about the quarterback position and Trevor Lawrence, what he has done, especially over the last few weeks, aside from the Detroit debacle where they got blown out in Detroit, but they've won 4 of their last 5, and they're really peaking at the right time right now. Travis Etienne is looking really good, and you got some good receivers on the outside. And, if you look at last Thursday night against the Jets, how good was Evan Engram in that game?
Yep.
I mean, 6 catches.
I feel like he had more catches than when I seen him as a Giant.
He certainly wasn't dropping the ball like he was used to. But Evan Engram was good, and the Jaguars have a lot of weapons on both sides of the football. And right now that they're clicking on all cylinders, they're going to win this game. They're going to avenge for the early season loss to the Texans, and they're going to go into this winning in matchup at 8-8 against the Titans. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean anything. You got to beat the Titans, because even if you lose, Titans are in at 8-9. So Jaguars are going to win, and they're going to get ready for this big matchup next Sunday.
All right, fair enough here. And let me get to John Gonzalez. He likes Jacksonville. He says here, Jags will win the division, and they might create some noise in the playoffs. That's an interest.
They're going to get a tough matchup. They're probably going to play Baltimore. That's going to be an intriguing matchup as a 4-5. I will say. I'll
tell you what. I mean, as an outside shot, you get the Chargers. I mean, Chargers Jaguars would be a fun match.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see.
They could. I mean, obviously, we'll get to the Ravens and the Sunday night game. I know the brute force he's drooling to pick that game. But in the meantime here, and I know I'm probably going to go against the grain here, but I got a chance to watch both these teams the last 3 or 4 weeks. But something tells me here, and the brute force will appreciate this, but in sports, when you play a team that has nothing to play for and is starting to play really well, the Houston Texans, I think, could kind of pull off an upset here. They're at home. They finally won. They're playing these teams very well. They're a team that has not quit. They've got a coach that's obviously had a lot of success. They're not giving up. They're playing a lot of hard. I know Jacksonville has played really good football. John Gonzalez makes a great point. They're a dark horse team to maybe win a playoff game, certainly against a Baltimore or Los Angeles. But call me crazy here, but I think the Texans are going to pull off an upset because I like the way they've played. They've moved the ball well. They've been able to do just enough here to hang in these games. They've got the coach. It's a matchup of a coach that's been to a Super Bowl, another one that's won. And I kind of think here, Houston home. Remember, don't sleep on a team that has nothing to play for. You know it, Brad. Remember that SJC team, the last team you played on, had a big win against Farmingdale at home, went to Yeshiva, played well. And I kind of feel like this is the moment here where maybe the Jaguars kind of fall into an upset here. And it still kind of doesn't matter anyway because it'll be all about Jacksonville next week anyway. But I kind of think I'm going to go with Houston here. And I think Houston in a mild upset, I'm going to say 24-21, something like that. So that's my take. And John Gonzalez also wants to tell me, in a shot at you, the brute force, he says here, sort of like the brute force, he has nothing to play for with his picks.
Wow, he's roasting me today. All right.
I'll tell you what. I've noticed this here the last week on Sportswire. People have been throwing shots at each other left and right on Sportswire Radio. It has been, whether it's people commenting on these things, people have been throwing haymakers the whole week. I thought I was going to coast this week into Sportswire, and every time I've been live, somebody is going back and forth, sniping at each other. But the brute force, let's go to another matchup that, again, also has something to play for. It actually has a lot to play for here. And that is a battle, I guess you might want to say, of first place between, I guess you could say, the resurgent Carolina Panthers, who've played much better football since they've changed coaches, and they unfortunately disposed of our Lions last week, a big setback for us. And the first place, very unimpressive, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who basically had to claw to win a game. And I've noticed the last three Buccaneers wins, the Rams win, the Saints win, and the Cardinals win, were almost the same type of football. Kind of get lucky, play just enough, I guess, okay defensively. Brady made enough plays, I guess. He did okay in the last, I'd say, 21, 22 minutes of that game, if you want to call it that way. And they found a way to win a very, very ugly football game. And I get the feeling this is going to be a very ugly football game here in Tampa. And right now the Bucs are 4-point favorites. 41 is the over-under. And this is a tough matchup here, the brute force. The Panthers have the momentum here, but it is Tom Brady, and it's always going to be Tom Brady getting the benefit of the doubt here. But I don't know the brute force. I look at this Buccaneers team the last several weeks. We've watched them a lot. They've been in prime time or in these 425 games, and I don't know that. I just something about them. But who do you think here wins in a matchup for all intensive purposes? Here is the battle of the NFC South. Okay, tell us why.
So it's going to be the Carolina Panthers. And listen, as Jets fans, I think some of us are going to really be disappointed when we see Sam Darnold win the division. Because, listen, as we've stated in the past, the Sam Darnold experiment, unfortunately, really wasn't fair to him. We never really surrounded him with anything. We gave him the worst coach, arguably, in NFL history for a few years, in Adam Gase. And, unfortunately, he didn't get really a fair enough shot. And now that he's getting a shot with the Panthers and the Carolina Panthers, listen, Steve Wilkes is coaching really well right now. I mean, last week's win, we'll get to the Lions in a second, but the Panthers played really well against the Lions to win that game. I know the Lions defense isn't great, okay, but the Panthers did a lot right, and that's why they won the game. I think that they're going to do a lot right again this week. And like you said, Tom Bryce, the Buccaneers have not been doing a lot right. They've been scratching out wins late. They've been finding ways late in the games. They're playing bad for 3 quarters, and, they play better in the fourth, okay? But I don't think they're going to be able to do that against the Panthers and win. I think the Panthers will be consistent enough throughout the game where they're going to score a little bit, piece by piece, maybe field goal by field goal, touchdown, maybe a field goal by field goal, okay? And they'll get a big enough lead where the Buccaneers will not be able to come back like they've been doing against some of these weaker teams. So I think that the Panthers win. I think the Panthers take control. And I think the Panthers win this division. And I think Tom Brady will go home and not go to the playoffs this year. I think the Panthers will win the division.
Well, I'll tell you what, that would certainly be a very, very interesting development. And the Buccaneers next week are in Atlanta, and the Panthers square off with the Saints in New Orleans. So very, very tricky matchup here, as John Gonzalez points out. And I'm going to have to think about this as we get to the guys here. And Chris, it is a very, very intriguing matchup. Panthers have played much better football here the last 9 or 10 games, and who knew what a difference changing coaches would make? I mean, I think it was the brute force that had mentioned maybe they should have changed coaches earlier in Denver. Maybe that would have salvaged their season. Maybe we'd be talking about Denver in a different route here. But Panthers have played much better football. They've been very good defensively. And Sam Darnold, unfortunately for us, as Brad points out, has looked a lot better. And the Bucs, again, I mean, this football team, I mean, they haven't really played great football. Even when they win, they remind me almost, for our boxing fans, they almost remind me of a boxer at the end of their careers or the end of a fight, kind of hanging on for dear life here. And they're going to win it based on the judges because of who they are. But I mean, it's in Tampa. Bucs are 4-point favorites. I mean, Bucs win, they clinch the division. But who do you think here wins in a very, very difficult one to pick? I think
with Carolina playing as well as they have recently, I'm still going to go with Tampa because, like you said, they could win, clinch the division, get that out of the way, and then start thinking about the playoffs and who they're going to match up against. The NFC to me is wide open. So I think their thinking is, hey, we get to the playoffs, we have just as good as a chance as anybody else, right? So with Tom Brady, you gotta love your chances with that guy. So I'm going to take Tampa.
Chris Collinsworth said the same thing at the end of the Sunday night game, and his line was, before I get to Justin, well, it's still Tom Brady. So if you're Dallas, as an example, you're going to still have to play Tom Brady on the road. So, I mean, that is a point that is well taken. So, I mean, Justin, again, the Panthers have played much better football here in the second half, and you've got a Bucs team that's been in first place pretty much, I think, for most of the season here, but they've just been unimpressive. They've let teams like the Saints and the Panthers hang in here, and even when they've won these games of late, I think about the Rams win, I think about the Saints win last week against a very, very poor Arizona football team, and even losing games like the Browns game in Cleveland there, and just the unimpressive effort week after week after week. And I kind of feel like that's the identity of this football team. Brady doesn't throw it deep. Their running game is one of the more poor in the league. I mean, defense is on the field a lot. I mean, they don't drive for very long. I mean, somebody has to win here. I mean, it's two teams, I guess, kind of going in different directions. I mean, but who do you think wins here in the battle of first place in the NFC South between the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Look, I know I criticized the Buccaneers a little bit earlier when we were talking about the Cardinals game and and how that game played out. But listen, there's two ways, there's two routes you could take. It's like that meme that is the fork in the road.
Yeah.
Well, I choose to not go down the foolish route. Because you'd be a fool if you ever bet against Tom Brady in a clutch situation. I don't care how bad the Bucs have been. I mean, there's a reason why he's the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, he's going to find a way, despite how bad things are on the offensive line. I think this is a good week for Mike Evans. I mean, you had the injury recently to J.C. Horn, and the broken wrist, which would probably end the season. So much so that they just re-signed, and I believe they activated him to the active roster, Josh Norman.
Wow.
What is Josh Norman these days? So, I mean, Chris, if you're Chris Godwin or if you're Mike Evans, you got to be licking your chops right now. And you know what? I think the Buccaneers are ready for a clutch performance, and on their home field, they're going to get it done.
All right, we'll certainly find out here. John Gonzalez says this one is tricky. Definitely stay away from this game, but he likes the Bucs by a slim margin, maybe a 1-point victory. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, their last 3 wins, I believe, have been by 1 point, right? I think the last 3 wins that the Buccaneers have been 1 point. So that's kind of a dubious fact here. And yeah, I mean, I, I'm gonna go with Tampa Bay. The only reason I'm going with Tampa Bay here because they're at home, and I kind of feel like that. I think Tampa Bay does just enough, and I think Brady said this after the game. I don't know if anybody caught this, but I think it was Melissa Stark, who, by the way, looked amazing last night. That's all I'm going to say. Last week she looked amazing, but what he said was to her was, well, that's the kind of football that we want to play. We just want to be close. We just want to be there to give us a chance, and call me crazy. I kind of think that it'll be that type of football game, and I kind of think that Bucks win 20-17, 20-19, as John Gonzalez points out, just because who would you rather have in the last 10 minutes of a game? Tom Brady or Sam Darnold? And again, I'm not confident about this. This would be one of those games, like Carlos Otoro Chavez said, if you could pick a tie, I would pick a tie here because I really don't feel inspired about either one of these teams, but I do think that Tampa Bay, just because they're in first place and this is kind of their moment, if they don't win here, I think it's going to be difficult for them, especially because I kind of like Carolina on the road again against New Orleans, but I think Tampa Bay wins here, but it'll be another one of those Buccaneer type wins. So we'll see about that here in the Brute Force. Let's go to another game that I guess sort of has implications in the NFC South. That is the New Orleans Saints, who are in a tough spot against the Philadelphia Eagles here. But I guess Vegas kind of thinks somewhat highly of the Saints because the Eagles are only 5.5-point favorites here. 41 is the over-under. And Eagles obviously coming off here a devastating loss to some extent against the Cowboys because, well, the Vikings can still actually catch him here when it comes to a home field in the top spot, but also NFC East is still up for grabs, and obviously here the Brute Force. New Orleans is still alive, and again, the NFC South, as we just spoke about, but Eagles look pretty good quarterback-wise, and I'll get Chris's thoughts on it because he's more of an Eagles guy than maybe some of us, but Philadelphia here in this spot, 1 o'clock game, still a lot to play for. New Orleans has also something to play for, but they are in a spot that I wouldn't feel too good about them in. But what do you think, the Brute Force, Brad Weiss?
Yeah, I'll let Chris do more of the analysis on this game. I'm just going to sit back tight for this one because there's no need for it. The Eagles are going to win. Gardner Minshew, is playing well. He played well last week against the Cowboys. So there's no reason for me to think the Saints are going to win. They're on the road. They're not playing particularly well. I know they're coming off a win, but ultimately – come on, the Saints stink, and the Eagles are really good, and Minshew's playing good football. So no analysis needed. I'll let Chris do that. All right, Eagles win.
Well, this is not as one-sided of a matchup as Kansas City and Denver. I mean, New Orleans is still technically alive. I mean, so I wouldn't say it's that one-sided. But all right, I respect the honesty. Chris, it's your Philadelphia Eagles here, and Eagles have certainly had as good a season as you could have hoped for here, and unfortunately, though, a loss against Dallas last week in an unbelievable game, just a great game to watch. And they are here 5.5-point favorites. I would have thought maybe a touchdown favorite they would be here, but that's here nor there ultimately. But Eagles definitely need a win, and New Orleans needs a win, but I kind of feel like Philadelphia needs that win a little bit more. But what's your thoughts here in this matchup, and will the Philadelphia Eagles get it done and get themselves one step closer to winning the NFC East and locking up home field throughout the NFC playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, there was talk that Hurts might actually play this week, but I think they're playing it safe and smart, giving him at least another week, and hopefully if Minshew could play well again, because he didn't play that bad against Dallas.
No, I thought he played a good game. I thought he played an okay game.
Defense didn't play great. For me, the bigger loss for the Eagles is Lane Johnson, their future Hall of Famer right tackle. He's going to be out at least until the playoffs. He's going to put off surgery, so he's going to try to play through it, and hopefully he's going to make it in the playoffs. But that would be a huge loss if he's out in the playoffs, because you're not replacing that guy. You just can't replace Lane Johnson at right tackle. So, but they should be able to beat the Saints even with Minshew quarterback, and he's not that bad. The rest of the offense looks good, so I'm going to take Philly to win and get that number one spot taken care of.
All right, I have a comment here from Adam Morgan. Adam, who is with us from time to time when it comes to wrestling, says Detroit Lions are going to win. I can feel it. We'll talk about them in a few minutes here. I can promise you that. But Justin, Eagles definitely need a win here to keep pace. Dallas is still hanging around when it comes to the NFC East, and Eagles also want to be able to lock up home field and get that bye in the first round. And New Orleans, for what it's worth, is still alive in that NFC South, that much maligned NFC South. But Eagles are 5.5-point favorites here. 41 is the over/under. And give me your thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, just like I mentioned with the Miami Dolphins, the Philadelphia Eagles are in a tremendous spot when it comes to a backup quarterback, right? It's never ideal to have your starting quarterback out. It's never ideal to see Jalen Hurts not on the field. But if that case arises, you got a guy like Gardner Minshew whom you can absolutely trust, and a guy who's playing for a contract. You know what? There's going to be some spots opening up at the quarterback position. Can he get himself a starting job in the NFL? I always felt like he got the short end of the stick in Jacksonville, fair or not. Now that they have Trevor Lawrence there, you knew he was going to be the guy. But Gardner Minshew's always been able to get the job done, and I feel like, yes, it's a drop off from an athletic standpoint because you're not replacing the talents of a Jalen Hurts, but you're going to be able to run the offense very efficiently. And against a bad New Orleans team, I mean, I just don't know how much they stand a chance in this game. So give me the Eagles.
All right, fair enough here. Let me get to a bunch of comments here. And John Gonzalez is funny here. He's got one for you, the Brute Force. He says, once I saw Brute picking Carolina, that eased my mind to pick Tampa. So it's kind of the machinations, the reverse psychology there, the Brute Force. He played one on you for a change, the Brute Force. And he says, John Gonzalez likes the birds big. He says Eagles will win the top spot for home field advantage. Well, I mean, they're in the driver's seat, right? So they certainly should
win this game.
The one drawback is the Johnson injury. That's a definite issue. I mean, it's hard for me to see Andy Dalton and the New Orleans Saints go into Philadelphia and win. When Washington did it, I think Washington's a little bit of a better football team than New Orleans. Philadelphia, obviously, in Dallas. I mean, you could, I guess, make a case to maybe seeing that Dallas, Philadelphia, a lot on the line. Dallas certainly was looking to that game, I think, in their dressing room for a while. So that didn't surprise me. But, I mean, I don't know how anybody could pick New Orleans in this matchup. When you ask me about Houston and Jacksonville, I can give a case. But in this matchup here, I think Philadelphia wins by 2 touchdowns, maybe 28-14, 24-10. I mean, I just don't see how is New Orleans offense going to do anything significant. They don't do anything offensively to begin with, and they're going to have to score some points. And it's not going to be last weekend's weather. Last weekend's weather, you could talk about the time of possession, run the ball, make sure you don't turn the ball over, you win. But it's going to be in the 50s in the tri-state area. So to me, that means I think there's going to be some offense. So, I mean, 50s in January is almost like 85, 90 degrees in August or June. So that's what I think. I think Philadelphia wins there rather comfortably. And the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, let's go to one more game. We'll always get to the Giants last. So we have one more game in the 1 o'clock hour to pick. And I think you know what time it is. That is, of course, for our beloved Detroit Lions, who unfortunately took a little bit of a hit last week. And they are back at home here, 1 o'clock, and they are 6-point favorites against those Chicago Bears. And the Brute Force, if this is ever a matchup for our beloved Lions to get healthy and get a huge win here, where we know next week there could be significant playoff implications, and who knows what the weather is going to be like down there in Green Bay. We'll reference them in a few minutes, but Lions here need a win badly. They need a very, very badly win. Hopefully, the Chicago Bears are just what the doctor ordered for us, so I know who you better be going for here in this matchup between our beloved Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to give me the persuasive speech on the Bears.
Not the Bears. We don't do that for the Bears. The Steelers, I'm going to do that. Don't you worry. Steelers, I got one for.
But listen, obviously, you know what I'm going with. I'm going with the Detroit Lions. Listen, I think last week's performance obviously wasn't the best for Detroit, but I give more credit to Carolina. I thought Carolina played very well, and I think that they won that game rather than Detroit losing that game. With that being said, Detroit, they're back at Ford Field in that comfortable environment. They've played very well at home this season. Okay, and they put up a ton of points at home. Plus, I'll add that before the season, when I predicted the Detroit Lions to win 6 or more games, I said they were going to beat the Bears twice, and they will. Okay, and they're going to in this game. Okay, Jared Goff's going to have a great game. He's going to be throwing the ball over the place. St. Brown is going to go for at least 1 or 2 touchdowns in this game. I could see Swift getting in there as well. So there's a lot of guys who can get in the end zone, maybe even some of the other receivers like Chark, you could see in the end zone as well. So I like the Detroit Lions scoring a lot of points in the 30s. I think this will be a high-scoring game. So give me the over if there is the number. What's the number, Tom?
52.
Oh, yeah. Give me the over for sure. I see this being a 35 to maybe 23 game in favor of the Detroit Lions. I think the Bears will play competitively, but the Lions will just do too much offensively, and the Bears won't even be able to keep up. And like you said, Tom, next week's matchup will be huge, and I think that's the game. You mentioned the Titans-Jaguars game. I think this might be the game between the Lions and Packers that goes into that primetime matchup.
It could be. No, I think there's going to be some interesting ones, and we can certainly, I'm sure, speculate that on the end of the show. And I just want to say one more thing before I get to Chris. The Rufus, I just want to say one more thing on Jared Goff this year. And 26 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 3,959 yards. So
listen,
you certainly wish you would have had that.
What was the deal again? If the Lions made the playoffs, I got to get a jersey. I proudly will get a jersey for Jared Goff's if they do it.
We pray. We certainly pray. We can pray here on Sportswire. I am a reverend, but we'll figure that out here for sure. And Chris, Detroit Lions really need a win here against the Chicago Bears, and it's a Bears team that's pretty much, I think they're going to be locked probably in that 2 spot in this year's NFL draft, but Lions need a win. This is as much of a must-win game as you're going to find for the Lions. Hopefully they get back on track, and 52 is the over-under, and even the Panthers-Lions was 60, so I think the Brute Force is right on one thing regardless. This will definitely be a shootout for whatever reason, but what's your thoughts here? 1 o'clock Sunday game, 2 rivals. Lions are 6-point favorites over the Bears, and give me your take.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to take the Lions. They're still playing for the playoff spot. They're the better team. Bears, I think, have lost, 8 straight now. They've only got one road win this year. That was against New England. So I think Detroit's going to win by a decent amount.
Oh, I pray. Justin, Lions here definitely need a win. 7-8. They're kind of in a gluttony of teams that are 7-8 in the NFC playoff picture. Among them is Seattle, Green Bay. We will get into, and it's Washington, who we spoke about later on, is 7-1. But Lions, Bears here. Bears certainly heading for the exits, and Bears could be making some moves off the field. As anybody saw those developments when it comes to, I believe, the Big Ten commissioner. I had read maybe Bears president. I think I saw that out there.
CEO, yeah, I saw the.
So I saw that, but Lions really need a win here. Hopefully they can win here. For now, home finale, 6-point favorites. They are 52 is the over/under. Give me a take.
Let me preface this by saying I will be taking the Detroit Lions in this game, but let's not act like this is a foregone conclusion here. If I'm not mistaken, Deontay Foreman is still running, and Chuba Hubbard is still running towards the end zone. Mm-hmm. What I saw last week was alarming by the Detroit Lions.
Oh my goodness! What they had, like 250 yards rushing in the first half. That was abominable.
Giving up 320 rushing yards for the entire game. Hubbard and Foreman. Did
they even have that many yards going into the game? It was abominable.
And it's absolutely alarming. And now you're facing a team that is 100% run first, and that's Chicago Bears. You obviously have Dave Montgomery, might have Khalil Herbert back. I'm not sure about that. And obviously Justin Fields, right? An electric athlete. I think this game is anything but a foregone conclusion. I do think in the end, the Lions will score enough points because the Bears' defense is atrocious. But, I would certainly be hammering that over because I could see both teams scoring 30-plus points. I might take the Bears to cover and say like 35-31 Lions in this game. But this ain't gonna be easy. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I kind of agree here. I have a bunch of different comments here. Let me get to John Gonzalez. Eagles signed former Cowboy Blake Jarwin this past week. Kind of interesting. He also, for you, the Brute Force, says, stay away from Detroit. Brute picked the Lions. Guess we're toast. Yeah, that's the confidence factor. He likes Detroit.
I've been picking Detroit right all year. I don't know where you've been, John Gonzalez. I've been picking Detroit right.
Detroit's performance last week was almost as bad as the Brute's picks this season. Well, you weren't that bad last week, the Brute Force. You weren't that bad.
How am I doing bad? All right, my record is 134-86. How is that bad?
Well, all of us have winning records this season. Not like all of us have played poorly. I mean, our picks have been generally, I think our winning percentages are all over like 600. So it's not like any of us have had bad, seasons. I mean, so I couldn't say that. But I always pick the Lions. I'm picking the Lions here, but I kind of feel like Justin. I think that the Lions will win, but I don't think they're going to go like 42-10. I could see this being 38-31. I mean, listen. If Fields is playing, I mean they're going to score points. I mean, he has 1,000+ rushing yards. I mean, just on that alone,
he's going to run for at least 100 in this game.
I mean, so if he's out there, they have a shot. I mean, there's no question. Look, the Lions definitely will be able to score points. Jamal Williams has got 14 touchdowns, no question. Goff, I mentioned his numbers, but I think Detroit wins. I always pick the Lions. I'm confident in them, but when it comes to a blowout, I don't think it's going to be a blowout because I think that Detroit is going to give up some points here, especially if Fields is playing. If Fields is playing, it's a rivalry game. Don't forget, it is a rivalry game here. So those are some things here. And I will say, Lions have given up 401 points this season. So that tells you, do the math, that they give up some points. So they're giving up on average over 25. So that tells you that there's going to be some points scored here. We'll go to the Giants as we always do last. Same with the Jets. The Brute Force, Brad Weiss. We're going to go to the 4 o'clock hour. And let's go first with another matchup that I guess doesn't really have much to play for. I guess the 49ers are playing for the 2 seed, and they're going to be playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who've obviously decided that Derek Carr is not playing here these next 2 weeks. And the Brute Force, you and the Raiders have had such an interesting relationship this season. A very, very interesting relationship, to say the least here. I mean, I go back to, I think the Raiders season, I'm going to say this, because I'm going to make sure Steve Saperstein hears this on WhatsApp when he comes back from vacation on Monday or Tuesday, that I feel like that the Raiders season was jinxed when he went there week 2, and the Cardinals came back and won that game the way they did late. I feel like since that moment, the Raiders have been jinxed. I thought they were going to be a good football team this year, but they're not. They're obviously going to be heading for the golf course, and the 49ers are, well, they're the 49ers, and they find quarterbacks, and it doesn't matter whether they're last in the draft, they're in the middle, or they're Jimmy G. They find ways to win yet again. They're the NFC Western Division champions, and they are 9.5-point favorites here. 42 is the over-under, and Raiders still do have Josh Jacobs. We spoke about him, and he's had an all-world season, but benching Derek Carr doesn't give me any confidence in this team whatsoever, and they always find a way to lose games. So who do you think wins here in this matchup in the battle of California versus Nevada?
Yeah, let me just tell you who I'm picking first, because it's obvious, because I might never take the Raiders again. The 49ers. I'm picking the 49ers. Listen, I actually got the Raiders right last week. I picked the Steelers. All right,
you did say that. To be fair, and I played the clip, and I actually heard it twice. You did say that was going to happen. You did, to your credit.
It's about time that I got the Raiders right. But in the end, like I said, they've destroyed me all year. Part of the reason why you see me 10 games behind John Gonzalez is the Raiders. So they will be forever a team now that I do not like picking, and I will not want to pick basically ever again because they disgust me. But in the end, this week, it's obvious. The 49ers are going to win. I'm absolutely loving what I see from Brock Purdy. I think he's doing some great things with the 49ers. Offensively, obviously they have a ton of weapons. They don't have Debo back yet, but he's working his way back. And, the Raiders, I mean, who is it, Stidham? I mean, a quarterback, Jarrett Stidham. So no way in heck the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are going to score more than 10 points.
I think they'll score more than that. They have Josh Jacobs still. They'll get more than 10.
I don't know, because listen, you don't discredit the 49ers defense. I understand that. Very good, and they know that they're going to take that away from the Raiders, and they're going to make Stidham beat them. All right, and Stidham is not going to do it. So give me the 49ers. I'll say like 27-10 final score. The 49ers will win, and they'll win pretty easily.
Chris, interesting season because the Raiders are actually only a -2 on this season. They've played so many close games, and to Brad's point, I mean, they've lost close game after close game, and some teams like the Vikings have been the masters. They've been the Houdinis of the close games, and yet the Raiders have been the polar opposite. I still say that Steve Saperstein jinxed them, but 49ers are playing for the 2 spot. Certainly things can work out in their favor, and they can be the 2 seed there. Maybe that matters. I don't know, but 49ers versus Raiders, 9.5-point favorites the 49ers are, and give me your thoughts.
Yeah, the Raiders have been losing some close games, but I don't think this week is going to be one of them. I think San Fran wins big. Raiders, like I said, they dumped out Derek Carr for whatever reason. Stidham, I think we've seen enough of Stidham with his time with New England to know what kind of quarterback he is. So I think San Fran wins big this game, and Brute Force might be right. I don't know if they're going to score 10 points. Maybe they'll get some. Maybe they'll get a garbage touchdown at the end of the game. But
how many points did they score last week?
I don't know.
Was it 13? The Raiders scored. I think was it 16 or 13? I think off the top of my head. I'll tell you right now.
10.
That's what I thought. 10. All right.
And the Niners got a much better defense. So,
but I would say
it's not going to be a pretty game. Let's say it that way.
I would say one point before I get to Justin, Brad, the weather in Pittsburgh, it was like minus 50. So you really thought that you can't hold that necessarily.
But Chris just said it accurately. The 49ers got a much better defense. And we talked about it before. So talk about D'Amico Ryans. That guy knows how to coach some defense.
Yeah.
I agree. Listen, I'll get to my take in a second. But, Justin, 49ers have definitely been firing on all cylinders. I believe they've won 10 of their last 11 games, if I'm not mistaken. It's either 10 of 12 or 10 of 11. And they've played very, very good football here in the second half. And I was speaking with one of our listeners yesterday, and he made sure to remind me, and he was a Cowboys fan. And he had told me, I was like, congratulations on the win. He goes, no. He pointed at me, said, no, the team I'm watching is the San Francisco 49ers, the NFC, not the Eagles, not the Vikings, not the Bucks, but he said it was the 49ers. And 49ers do have all the momentum right now. Raiders obviously are playing for the lottery and the golf course. And who do you think here comes away with a victory? Although I think I kind of know who you're going to pick.
Yeah, and my first bold prediction of the week, the Raiders are getting shut out in this game.
Wow. Okay, boy.
They will not score a single point. I'm looking at a 24-0 kind of game. The Niners are just going to make this look so easy in this game. Running the ball with Christian McCaffrey, even minus Deebo Samuel, getting the ball to George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. And I just don't see Jarrett Stidham being able to competitively run an offense. And it's going to be one of the worst displays. It's going to be one of the worst displays you'll ever see. He's just not an NFL quarterback. Clearly, the Raiders are protecting Derek Carr from themselves because they're on the hook for a bunch of money if he gets hurt. So they're figuring, okay, why the hell not? Let's see what Jarrett Stidham is. We know what he is. He's not a good quarterback. It's the Niners are going to steamroll.
Well, one point I will say before I get to John Gonzalez, 49ers, to the guy's points, their plus differential, 145, which gives them tied for second in the NFL. Believe it or not, tied with the Dallas Cowboys, the brute force. And the Buffalo's first, by the way, plus 157. So thank you.
Arguably the best defense in the National Football League. And for my money, they're the only team that's going to be able to go into Philadelphia and have a shot at winning.
Well, that was the point that the listener that is a fan of ours had told me. And even though he was a Cowboys fan, I was trying to hype him up and, trying to thank him here. And John Gonzalez has his thoughts. And he says, first part is the most entertaining part of the Raiders is Mark Davis's hairstyle. So certainly that's a hairstyle. And I have an interesting hairstyle. And I'm not going to mimic that hairstyle. And John Gonzalez says 49ers, no need for explanation, 38-7. No, I think they'll win. I definitely think the 49ers will win. There's no way that they don't win here in this spot. but I just think that the Raiders might score 14. That's all, 14 or 17. That's just all. It could be 31-17 or 35. What difference does it make? Right? We're picking based on wins. We're not picking on the differentials for the over under and everything else. So that's here nor there. We'll skip the Jets toward the end. The brute force Brad Weiss. I'd go to the 425 hour. Let's go to a matchup that again has implications for our beloved Detroit Lions. And he said this, and Justin kind of referenced it when it comes to quarterbacks. And certainly he's playing, I think, a little bit better football maybe than the numbers have anticipated this season, although the interceptions are a little too high. Even last week, he had a little more interceptions than I would have liked. And that is Aaron Rodgers. When Aaron Rodgers said before the game against the Bears about 4 weeks ago that he thought that his Packers team could win out and make the postseason, people laughed, right? But the way, I hate to say it, that it's going to pan out here, there's a possibility if he gets the luck that he needs, and it's, I think, very, very much in reach, that the Packers could be in the postseason. And who would want any part of Aaron Rodgers, and especially coming off 5 straight wins here? But Packers are field goal favorites over the Vikings, who have clinched the NFC North, who are still playing for the top spot. 45.5 is the over-under. And, who do you think wins? This is going to be a dangerous matchup, to say the least here.
Yeah, definitely going to be a great game also, by the way.
Absolutely.
To watch. But I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to roll with you, Tom, with that momentum that Aaron Rodgers is talking about. I think that, they're at home. They're at Lambeau Field. Minnesota took it to them early in the season. And listen, we've talked about Minnesota in close games. And I know that they've been the kings of it.
Only +5 this season. They're plus differential 12-3 +5.
Right. But in the end, they have been finding ways to win the games. But I just don't think they're going to this time. I think that there'll be a lot of pressure on Kirk Cousins. I think he'll make a few mistakes in this game. And I think Aaron Rodgers is going to play good football. And listen, you're starting to see a nice connection between him and Christian Watson. That's been big for the Packers. Fantasy owners this week in their championship games are going to like him in this matchup. So, I see Minnesota scoring points. I just see Kirk Cousins making mistakes while Aaron Rodgers is going to make some plays in this game. And again, they're at home. They know their season is still on the line. They need this game. Minnesota, I know they still got the top spot in their heads, but they've already clinched the division, as you mentioned, Tom. And as much as I like Uncle Rob, I think that the Packers at home are desperate. They're good at home, and I think they'll get this game in a relatively good game. I think it'll be close. Actually, the field goal spread, I think it'll just beat it. I'll say maybe 35-31, and I think the Packers win.
Chris, as a team as dangerous on paper as the Green Bay Packers, despite all of their season struggles, despite the middle of the season into the second half, we were all like, this team's going nowhere, and yet here we are, and this team's won 3 straight games, and if it all works out to their favor, they could be in the postseason. And if you're one of these teams, like let's say a San Francisco or a Minnesota, do you want to play the Green Bay Packers, especially if I'm Minnesota? If I'm Minnesota, I'm in that 2 spot. We know Minnesota in big spots, they come up short, and it is Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. Who knows? Anything can happen with Aaron Rodgers. Packers have gotten some luck and the help that they've needed. And will they be able to get win number 4 and maybe get one step closer to this turnaround and maybe sneak their way into the postseason?
Yeah, it's amazing. Minnesota just keeps on winning. A team that, when you watch them play, you're not that impressed. Their defense is not that
good. How do
they
win? The Jets we saw, and the Giants, the Colts, and the Lions play. I don't know how they win. How?
They win. I would think about taking Minnesota here. I just don't trust them in a spot like this. But you know what? You guys are all taking the Packers, so I'll take Minnesota. That's my upset.
All right, here. Somebody's echoing me, so I'm gonna mute Brute Force and Chris and kind of figure that out. All right, so I think we fixed the problem. I'll bring the guys back in a second. But Justin, we are here with you. Packers and Vikings. Vikings again certainly have had quite the season. 12-3. They've been kind of the Houdinis of the NFL, and the Packers have pretty much since Aaron Rodgers saying, you know what, if we win out, we can make the playoffs, and and they're almost right there. They need 2 more wins of the 5-win journey here, and unfortunately, I kind of feel like that's going to come down to that Lions-Packers game. But give me your thoughts on this matchup here, and if the Packers continue their momentum, or maybe the Vikings kind of find a way to continue their Houdini hack all season.
It's kind of curious how there's at least 3 times that I remember that the Minnesota Vikings, while having the better record, are the team that's the underdog. Remember the Dallas situation, and then they get blasted 40-3. You had the Lions situation a couple weeks ago. The Lions ended up beating them, and I know, and that game was in Detroit. But you were like, well, yeah, Detroit's good and they're getting better, but Minnesota's the better team. Yeah, Minnesota should be the better team, but there's a reason why Green Bay's favored. And right now, I don't want to face Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry. I think he is riding the wave, and I think the Packers are going to make the playoffs here. I really do. I think they're going to get the job done, and it's going to start this week. They're going to play a nice brand of football with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And like Brad said, the connection between Aaron Rodgers and Christian Watson has only grown over the last few weeks of the season, and that has been a huge development for the Green Bay Packers. They're really starting to hit their stride. You know what they say, better late than never. It's not, you know what? In the season, clock hasn't struck midnight on them, and I think they're going to get it done this week. Give me the Packers.
You know what? As crazy as it sounds, and I'll unmute the brute force for a second because I think that's where the echoing is coming from. Unfortunately, the brute force, you might want to adjust your settings. I'll bring you on here in a second. But you think about the seasons that Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers have had, and it's certainly not the seasons that they're used to having. In fact, Aaron Rodgers 27th in quarterback rating. So, I mean, if you buy into that, this quarterback rating is just above Zach Wilson, right? But it's still Aaron Rodgers, and even a guy like Kirk Cousins who's only 20th in quarterback rating, and then Brady's in the middle. But, they still are Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, and if they're in the playoffs, nobody's going to want a part of them because of their resume. So that's kind of the interesting point here. And let me get to John Gonzalez, and then I'll pick, and then we'll come back to the brute force. I'll unmute you. John Gonzalez likes the Packers. Christian Watson was hurt from what I'm hearing. John Gonzalez also says the Packers are more scary if they make the playoffs than the Vikings. It would be so fascinating if it's Packers-Vikings first round, because I think that the Packers could beat Minnesota in the first round. If it's San Francisco and Green Bay, I don't know. I mean, I still think Rodgers can win on the road and still win in these spots. But I think if it's Minnesota-Green Bay's got a 50-50 shot. So there's a point here, and I kind of agree. I just think for whatever reason, I got that feeling in my stomach, that feeling that, you know what, yes, it's not been the season that Rodgers is used to having, 3,300 yards only. He's got more than 10 interceptions. The TD ratio, quarterback rating is under 40, but I think Green Bay is going to win here. I just think Green Bay at home, and Brad, it's going to come down to us here in them next week, and that could be a game that's a flex candidate. But in the meantime, the brute force, we have another matchup here that's really, I guess there's something to play for, but I don't know. But it's the Los Angeles Rams and the Los Angeles Chargers and the Battle of Los Angeles. And somebody's obviously the home team, and I guess you would say it's the Los Angeles Chargers. And Chargers are 6.5-point favorites here. But for what it's worth, the Rams have played better football with Baker Mayfield. They've actually played better than they played most of the season. And what a performance Baker Mayfield had last week. He actually, by the way, won the MVP, which was the Nickelodeon Most Valuable Player. Nobody was watching the Nickelodeon game, but I was, because I'm goofy like that. And it was kind of funny seeing him win that trophy. And the little kid was asking, well, what's it like winning this trophy? You just came and played on this team. And Baker Mayfield was obviously very gracious about it. And congratulations to him on winning that award. But brute force, Chargers are in the postseason here after last year's kind of postseason debacle where they should have been in the postseason. But they are in the postseason here for the first time in a few years. And Rams are playing out the string, but they've won 2 of their last 4 games. It's 42 is the over-under. And what do you think here in this matchup? Something tells me here this might actually be kind of a sneaky good game here in the battle of 2 Los Angeles teams.
Yeah, definitely could be a sneaky game. There is a reason why I got flexed out, though, Tom. If Lex Allen gets under
we're going to be talking about that. Don't you worry. They're next. I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, and obviously it shouldn't have been for them, but I'll get to that in a second. But
I disagree with that. I disagree.
But anyway, all right, listen, it won't be the prettiest game of LA against LA, all right, in Inglewood.
So it won't be like Dodgers and Angels, you're saying, pretty much, or something like
exactly.
that. Or Lakers Clippers. That's the better reference.
Exactly. It won't be a great game, but I do think the Chargers end up winning the game. The spread, you said 6.5, Tom.
Yep.
It was originally 8.5, and I was going to take the Rams with that. I do think I'm going to stick to the Rams. If it goes to 6, maybe I'll go back to the Chargers. But with 6.5, I'll take the Rams. I think that they do play a competitive game in this game. I know Austin Eckler might not play, which is a big thing for the Chargers. But, they still have their weapons on the outside, and they still have Justin Herbert, who I think will have a good game. So give me the Chargers to win the game. I think Baker Mayfield will compete, but not win in this game. And this game is not going to be one of those that, maybe you want to see it because it'll be nice and sunny. But that's basically all I could say about it because it won't be that exciting to watch.
I don't know about that. Call me crazy. I don't know about that, Chris. Obviously, Chargers return to the postseason here, and they get in with a win against the Colts on Monday night's game, and just a really kind of indicative of the Monday Night Football season. Just really a boring game to watch. And the Rams here in the Nickelodeon game looked, I guess, for what it's worth, very impressive against the Denver Broncos. But I think the story here is that Baker Mayfield has played respectable football here since he's gotten the job there, and he's won him a couple games. But the Chargers are definitely playing well. There is something to be said. I guess you could move up here to be in the 5th spot. Maybe you want to play Jacksonville or Tennessee. I would certainly love to play Tennessee if I'm certainly Los Angeles. But Herbert's had a pretty good year. He's thrown over 4,000 plus yards. I think it's been, despite the injuries, it's been a decent year. He's definitely followed up what you liked from him last year. But give me your thoughts on who would win here in the Battle of Los Angeles between last year's Super Bowl champion, the Los Angeles Rams, and the playoff-bound Los Angeles Chargers, who will try to make it, for what it's worth, 2 in a row in Los Angeles for Super Bowl wins.
Well, the Chargers have been playing good the last few weeks, right? They got 3 in a row. Defense has been playing much better. I like the Chargers, but I think it's going to be a little bit better game than maybe we think it could be. Like you said, Baker's been playing well, and Baker's also, along with Minshew, he's playing for a contract too. So he's trying to impress not just the Rams, but every other team out there to hopefully get a contract. So I think it'll be a closer game, but I think the Chargers are going to win.
All right, fair enough here. And Chargers have won 4 of their last 5 games, so they are kind of peaking at the right time here. And Justin, I kind of think, at least, and call me crazy, I think this is going to be kind of a sneaky kind of good game, a competitive game. I don't think Sean Payton's going to be the kind of coach that lets his players lie down. I don't think it's a situation in Denver there or Las Vegas. I do think it's a Rams team that's a proud football team. I was speaking with one of our old analysts, Ray DeNiro, and he kind of thought that the Rams will be an interesting team to look at in the offseason, what happens with Matthew Stafford. But that's here nor there for now. Baker Mayfield is played respectable, has a couple of wins under his belt since he's gotten the job there in Los Angeles. And Justin Herbert's looked pretty good for the most part, despite the rib injury. And Chargers have won 4 of their last 5 games. And despite their plus differential, they are back in the postseason. And who do you think wins here in the Battle of Los Angeles? Oh, I gotta unmute you. I'm sorry. I just realized. There we go. There you go.
I keep kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop for the Chargers, but it's just not happening. And this week is a good matchup for them, just because the Rams' defense isn't all that good. I think Baker Mayfield could certainly be able to put up some points in this game. I'm not confident at all in that spread number, but for the sake of our picks here, I am going to take the Chargers. But it's another game. It's not a foregone conclusion here. I do foresee a scenario that the Rams could pull off an upset. I don't quite think that'll materialize, but it wouldn't shock me at all. I do like the Chargers, but in a close one.
Before I get to John Gonzalez, 1 point on the Chargers. Their plus-minus differential, they were minus 11 this year. So if you are looking at that as an indicator, certainly that might be something to think about. John Gonzalez here likes the Chargers. He also says here Mayfield has found a home in Los Angeles where he should stay and be Stafford's backup. He'd be a very quality backup. That's an excellent
He's
point
going to
there.
want to start, though.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to be some teams that will certainly be in the running for them. One team we'll get to toward the end of the show that maybe they'll be in the market. I'm sure they're going to be in the market for a whole lot of quarterbacks. We'll get to them. They'll be our last game to pick. But, I kind of want to pick the Los Angeles Rams here. You know what? I'm going to go on a limb, and I'm going to pick the Los Angeles Rams here because something tells me here with the coach that he's a proud coach. He's a coach that's going to have these guys inspired. You have a quarterback that might be playing for something. You have a team that's starting to play a little bit better football. Maybe they believe, it's for all intensive purposes. It's a home game for them. I'm kind of going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to say the Rams win this game. I think that the Rams win. It's a Chargers team that pretty much they're a Houdini act. Other than the Monday game, they pretty much play almost all close games. And that's indicative of their plus-minus, their minus 11. And I kind of think here Rams find a way to win. I don't know why, but I think it's going to be a 27-24 type of game. I mean, something tells me here that I kind of think that the Rams win here. And it's just, they've played a little bit better football. Even the Monday night game, I didn't think the Rams played that bad in Green Bay for all intents and purposes. It was a competitive game, and I thought they hung in there. So I kind of think it's a Rams team the last 3 weeks. It's playing a lot better football. And again, kind of like Houston, a team like this, you might not want to play. That's the old adage, Brad. We talk about it all the time when we cover college athletics. And the brute force, Brad Weiss, this is the game. I think of all the games I've been so excited about because we were speaking on Instagram during the week, and I know how mad you are deep down, but secretly you're happy. Secretly you're happy that we're getting a Sunday night matchup here, which we're so accustomed to this, between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. And it's a Baltimore Ravens team that's yet again going to be without Lamar Jackson. And it's a Pittsburgh Steelers team, I want to remind you, the brute force, Brad Weiss, that has won 5 of their last 7 games. They are still alive here in the AFC playoff picture. And last year, they were kind of in this spot, and they found a way to sneak into the postseason. If there's ever a team that could find a way to sneak in, call me crazy, it could be the Pittsburgh Steelers. And also, Mike Tomlin is also playing for the fact that he has never had a losing record as a coach in the NFL, and this would mark 16 seasons in a row that he would not have a losing record. And something tells me here, this kind of game, the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's a lot of emotions right now, a lot of heart. Franco Harris, in a lot of ways, old guys like Rob Marasco are going to appreciate this. Bobby Tats, who's with us on Sportswire. It reminds me in a way of just going back at the history books. And I was thinking of a comparison because I knew the brute force was going to, he was waiting for me all day to speak about this. The Steelers season right now reminds me of like the 73 Mets, where they were just down and out the whole season. Everybody counted them out. And for whatever reason, they found a way. And Watt comes back and quarterback tribulations, all that stuff, but yet they find ways to win. And it's set up for them. And the Ravens are very small favorites here, but it's the indicative 2.5, 37.5 is the over-under. And Brad, I know who you're going for. And I can't wait for you to see that. Here we go, Steelers. And tell us all on Sportswire Radio, who are you picking in the matchup that you have been circling your calendar for since midnight Monday night?
Oh, God. I mean, that was good.
Well, I will tell you this. You know what Ryan Highland told me once when he brought me into the John Jay locker room? He said this to me off the air many times. He called me the greatest hype man in college basketball. That's what he called me once. I will kid you not.
You definitely hype up the Steelers. That's for sure. And let me get my puke bag out.
Oh, I knew it! I had you! I told you the brute force got him!
He got me on
resist.
this one. And
couldn't resist.
His persuasive speech, he got me, and I'll admit I had this game as the Steelers. This is a tough one for me because you know what? I hate to say I'm wrong and Tom was right, but he's right. I mean, the Steelers and Mike Tomlin have never had a losing season And everything is indicating to me right now that somehow, some way, the Steelers are going to find a way, right, not to have a losing season this year. And I think that this game, and then listen, you only go a few weeks back. I believe it was the game Kenny Pickett got hurt. Is that correct, against the Ravens?
That was the game we spoke, and it was like...
Yes. And I remember I picked the Steelers. So he got hurt in that game, and Huntley went in there. Wasn't too impressive, but led the Ravens to a win. I just think that with Kenny Pickett back, with motivation on his side from that, tough loss to them a few weeks before he got hurt, and they were playing well before he did get hurt in that game. I do think that Kenny Pickett's going to come back with a vengeance. The Ravens have not definitely made anyone impressed. I think the Bengals obviously are going to win that division. Probably won't even come down to that game next week because I think the Steelers will win this game, and we'll get to the other game later. But anyway, the Steelers will win this game. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be competitive, but I think the Steelers will win like 23-17. I think that's about the score I'm looking at.
That's what Steelers football. Other than the Bengals Steelers game, that's been Steelers football.
Right, by a few field goals, they'll kick it late in the game and they'll win the game. It pains me to say this, Tom. It really pains me. But the Steelers, after all the things I've said, they're terrible, they're trash, everything terrible. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to finish with an over 500 record this season.
I believe in them.
Cleveland next week. It's Cleveland next week.
It devastates me to say it, but they're going to do it. And you know what? If they make the playoffs, I mean, I might have to be nice to the Steelers the rest of my career on the sports.
There's only 2 years in a row now. I'm not going to count my chickens too much and be that optimistic because obviously we hope the Jets make the playoffs, but there's a shot. I don't know if they're going to get the same help they got last year because there's like way too many teams.
They still might not make the playoffs though because the Jets have the tiebreaker over the Steelers.
Yeah, and that's my point, and that was going to be my next point. I don't know if they're going to make it, but
for them to be 9-8 this season is impressive considering where they were.
I think if they even go 8-9, it's remarkable because this team really was like, I mean, Trubisky was awful. I mean, Pickett hasn't had a super duper season. I mean, he's been better with the ball, but he hasn't had a great season. I mean, Najee Harris has been okay for them. I mean, Deontay Johnson's been good, but I mean, it's not like this is like a wow Steelers team, with Roethlisberger. But before I get to Chris, John Gonzalez wants to question me on the 73 Mets reference. The reference isn't to the fact that the Steelers are going to the Super Bowl as the Mets went to the World Series. The reference is that the Mets, and I was looking this up because I wanted to get an inspirational thing for the Brute Force. The Mets season was basically they were like 10 or 11 games back in the middle of August, but everybody was kind of like bunched up with them. And the Steelers, kind of like in the AFC, all these teams like the Jets and the Dolphins and the Patriots and the Browns, all these teams, they were able to kind of hang in there and give themselves a chance where maybe if certain luck finds their way in. And he also tells me stop talking to Rob Maraska. Well, Rob Maraska probably could give me a book report in the 73 Mets. I wasn't born in 1973, but I'm going to move off on that point. I'm going to come to Chris Bizzea because I don't want to talk about the 1973 Mets. I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens here. And Chris, somebody has to win here. Ravens obviously are still playing for the AFC North to be devil's advocate, and they do have a big matchup in their own right next week against Cincinnati, and Steelers have certainly gotten the luck that they would have wanted from my perspective, but it is a Sunday night game. There is no Lamar Jackson, but the Ravens have been able to find ways to win, and it's a classic matchup between two teams we've seen here many times in this spot, and who do you think wins here in the Sunday night matchup?
Yeah, listen, the Ravens are not that impressive whatsoever this year, but they just keep winning. They just keep finding ways to win, barely. So this is probably going to be a low-scoring, Baltimore-Pittsburgh type of game, back and forth maybe, but a low-scoring game. But I'm going to take Baltimore because they're home, and they also got that big game coming up next week. I don't think they're going to beat Cincinnati, but at least they have that coming up. So I'll take Baltimore in a tight game.
Oh, it's definitely going to be a tight game here. And Justin, certainly Ravens have been, again, I guess kind of the AFC's version of the Vikings, a little bit better, plus-minus differential. But Steelers and Ravens, it's Harbaugh and Tomlin. I think about coaching rivalries over the past decade or so, maybe a little longer. This has been probably the premier one, and Steelers have played certainly inspired football of late, and Ravens have been here kind of and played just enough to win throughout most of the season, but it's a must-win game, certainly for both teams, maybe more so to be devil's advocate for the Baltimore Ravens, but it's a spot we're so used to these two teams being in. Ravens are 2.5-point favorites here. 37.5 is the over-under. And what do you think here in the Sunday night matchup?
Well, first of all, I just did some quick math on how the Pittsburgh Steelers actually can make the postseason.
Give it to me.
All right. So first of all, to get them out of the way, it requires the Jaguars to win the AFC South.
Okay, got that.
In the South, that means the Titans would finish 7-10. Okay, the Miami Dolphins have to go 0-2, lose to the Patriots, lose to the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
That means the Patriots would win to get to 8-8 this week, lose to Buffalo 8-9. The Jets would have to lose to Seattle, beat Miami. They'd be 8-9, and the Pittsburgh Steelers would have to win 2 in a row.
I mean, it's
not out of the realm of possibilities.
Right. Not impossible.
There's a lot that's got to go their way.
I think Green Bay has better odds, but I mean, there's a chance. Look, they made it last year. They're the Houdinis, so who knows, right? Who the hell knows?
Well, Green Bay has much better odds. If the Packers go 2-0, they're in the postseason.
But my point was Green Bay was 4-8, and they've basically won. Yeah. That was my point.
Come from the doldrums to we're here. All right, but be that as it may, the Steelers are getting 8-8 this week. The Ravens, just without Lamar Jackson, are just absolutely atrocious offensively. I mean, last week against the Falcons was such a blah performance. They were lucky.
Even when they played Denver, they played the Giants game. They lost Carolina. They don't win these games
by a lot of games. They beat the Panthers 13-3, and that was with
Denver.
Lamar.
They won the last possession. Wilson got picked off, I believe. Just
exactly
unimpressive.
And even the game they beat against Pittsburgh, I will tell you that much. If Pickett finishes the first Baltimore game, they win. Pittsburgh wins that game. So I'm not impressed with Baltimore right now. I think the Steelers are kind of coming together as a unit, especially after the emotions of last week. I think you start to see Kenny Pickett, although it might not show up in the stats, turning a corner a little bit. So I like the Steelers. Give me a very, very close matchup.
All right, John Gonzalez here says he jinxed Detroit. Now he's working his black magic on Pittsburgh. And John Gonzalez, though, is going with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I already read his comments about me. He says definitely low scoring. And obviously, I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I believe I have reasons to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers because I think that defense has played much better since Watt has gotten back in there. I think when Pickett is in there, they're a formidable team. I think he's done a better job in being responsible with the ball. I think he's also done a better job because his running back, I think Najee Harris has come on, I think, pretty strong in the second half. I think he's got a good tight end, which I think is important for a Mike Tomlin offense. And I kind of think here in this spot, I mean, Tomlin finds a way to win. He always finds a way to win in these games. He's always somebody that in these spots, his teams are disciplined. And I think Pittsburgh, and I'm believing in them.
And you mentioned the tight end. How many years was Ben Roethlisberger's go-to guy Heath Miller? And now they have Pat Freiermuth.
And I think he's got 60+ catches or something like that.
Pat Freiermuth's had a tremendous season. Absolutely. He's a tremendous
And
player.
you know what? And what is and Chris and Sean, I know have talked about this before I get to John Gonzalez. What wins games this late in the season? It's the tight ends because you're playing these closer games. You're playing where it's time and possession, where you got to move.
I also think the emergence of Jaylen Warren as well.
Yes.
A second running back behind Najee Harris has absolutely given the Steelers offense a little bit more.
He's had some good runs. He's had some nice long runs, and he's given them that extra depth. And John Gonzalez, I am fully in agreement. Before we get to the Monday night game, where is Mr. Napkin? Where is this guy, Anthony Finkel? This guy who's loves Sportswire, and he's oh my god,
magic napkin to use. That's why.
Yeah.
He's on.
He might be looking for a wet napkin. Maybe that's what he's looking for. Mr. Anthony Finkel, Mr. Sportswire, and loves us. And yeah. Where is this guy? He's right well, you get when you have wings, he likes wings. So when you have wings, they give you wet napkins to kind of dry your hand, which I never liked wet napkins because they always made your fingers almost like hand sanitizer. But that's here nor there. But yeah, John Gonzalez, where is Anthony Finkel? Where's Joe Bostrom, who's with us here? Ron Laird, all these guys that are always with us. Yeah, Sportswire, and these guys who are picking Joe Bostrom of all people. But listen, I don't want to rag on guys. I know it's New Year's weekend and people are out with their families. But Anthony Finkel, where are you, Mr. Napkin guy who might win this here, John Gonzalez? You better make sure you win this, John Gonzalez. I'm telling you, you better win this. But Monday night game here, the Brute Force. Now, this game, I can't quite say would be an upset either way because this is all intensive purposes probably – maybe it's the best game of the season because I know Kansas City and Buffalo. We've had Kansas City, Cincinnati, but Buffalo and Cincinnati here. And this game, boy, I mean, this is a game you probably circle on your calendar. This is almost like when you have an NBA calendar. You look for certain teams here, and you'd want to see them. And this is the matchup. I mean, this better be the best Monday night game of the season, the Brute Force. Monday Night Football, hopefully, is going out in style here. But Buffalo is 1-point favorites here. I believe they're on the road here in 1-point favorites. And this is a quintessential, I mean, this is a toss-up game. I don't think we've seen, and I know I've done a lot of these games, and I have a good memory, and maybe somebody will quote me on this, but this is probably, I think, maybe one of the only games this season I've seen a 1-point spread for a road team in a spot like this, but it's the last Monday night game of the season. So much is on the line here. We've got a lot. Home field. We've got divisions at play. We've got seeding. And, I mean, this is a match. This is, to me, like almost for our wrestling fans, like a WrestleMania world title main event. This is like NBA final. This is just like, to me, it's like LeBron and Steph. This is so many things. It's like Crosby and Ovechkin almost in some ways. For hockey, baseball, it's almost like, to me, Trout and Judge, if you want to throw those. I can go all day on comparisons. But Bills here are 1-point favorites on the road against the Bengals. 8:20 p.m. is the usual kickoff. Last Monday night game of the year. 49ers the over-under. I mean, the Brute Force, I mean, this might be a pick'em game, but these two teams are red hot. So much on the line. Who do you think?
Yeah, so you gave me the spread, so that means that has to go up there. Even though it's not, I know it's a pick'em game.
Yeah, 1 point, I don't know if I call it an upset. Is it an upset?
No, but again, as I always explain, okay, I go by the actual numbers. So you said that.
Fair, I respect that.
All right, then I'm going to pick the upset because I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals. Happy New Year to Billy Heenan. All right, it's going to be a great New Year for you and your Bengals because, like I alluded to earlier, this win is going to win you guys the division. I don't think next week's game is going to matter because I think the Steelers are going to beat the Ravens. So if the Steelers beat the Ravens and the Bengals win, it would be a 2-game spread, which means that next week's game would mean nothing. Okay, so I think that's exactly what's going to happen. The Bengals are just playing really good football. I know the Bills are also a great team. I just really like the way the Bengals are playing. They have all their enforcements back now on offense. I mean, there's a lot to like if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan. And, you know, I mean, two completely opposite stories, Tom Bryce, between the Rams and the Bengals, the two teams that were in the Super Bowl. I mean, the Rams fell apart. The Bengals kind of started off a little slow.
Very slow. We were worried about them earlier. Remember, we were doing a show, and we were worried about them.
That was going to be my next point, is that earlier in the season, you look at this Monday night game, maybe you're not as excited because you didn't like the way the Bengals were playing. But now that they've gotten their footing and they're playing at a really high level, like you guys said, this should be the best Monday night football game. I think it's going to be a great game, very similar to that Kansas City Bengals game earlier in the season. Yep. And I think it's going to be a similar score. I'm going to give it 34-31. I think that the Bengals win. And listen, the story of Joe Burrow, I mean, this guy's unbelievable. And I think he just continues to come through when it matters. And I know Josh Allen is great, but Joe Burrow is showing something at a very young age. He is clutch, and he makes things happen when they need him. And I think he's going to do it again at home in Cincinnati in a close game. Joe Burrow comes through. Bengals win.
Boy, Chris, I can't wait to hear this weekend what you and Sharman say about this game. I really, really am excited to hear. But this is a matchup. I mean, this is AFC Championship game preview, possibly, depending on where the stadium might be. And, I mean, this is a matchup. I hope we get to see it year after year after year as many times as possible. And certainly I hope for ESPN and our stake as fans, this will be the best Monday Night Football game of the season. Bills here are 1-point favorites on the road against Cincinnati. I mean, both teams are playing great football here and have won game after game after game. And I mean, somebody has to win, and there's a lot of implications here for both teams. And I mean, who do you think wins?
The good thing about this game is that they haven't played each other in like 3 years, right? So you're talking about they haven't faced each other recently, so they kind of don't know each other other than just watching film. They haven't faced each other recently. So no Burrow 3 years ago, obviously. But you know what? And you look at Buffalo's only 3 losses this year have all been by like 3 points or less, right? The Minnesota game, that crazy Minnesota game.
Oh the overtime game. Yep.
Right. That bonkers game. And then of course the Jet game, they lost by 2. And then early on they lost to Miami by, I think, 2 points as well. That was another nut game, how it ended towards the end. So other than that, man, Buffalo's got, I think, 7 or 8 in a row now. Not 7 or I think 6 in a row. 6, right? 6 since they lost the Minnesota.
Bengals 7, Bill 6.
Yeah. Yep. So they're both coming in hot. I'm going to go with Buffalo because Buffalo needs, we said it a little bit earlier, Buffalo needs that number 1 seed more than I think anybody, even Kansas City. Buffalo, they seen last year losing to Kansas City in that playoff game, another crazy nut game. But Buffalo wants these games in Buffalo, in the playoffs, right? Late January, minus degrees or whatever it's going to be in a couple of weeks. I'm gonna say Buffalo. This is the game that Buffalo wanted to win to set themselves up for the playoffs, to get that number 1 seed. So go Buffalo.
And you know what's funny before I get to Justin about about Buffalo, I remember as a little kid those Bills teams in the early 90s. That was a very, very tough place to play in Orchard Park. Mm-hmm. And I think I said this last week on the show when it was the Raiders, the Broncos went there, Miami, those teams that would have to go into that place. And if it's really cold in Buffalo, I think Buffalo, it's a bigger deal, I think, for them than Cincinnati or even Kansas City. And again, Justin, I mean, this game is so much on the line here. Obviously, these are probably the 2 best teams right now in the AFC. And maybe in football, they're 2 of the hottest teams. I'd say San Francisco would probably be also in the mix. But they've both had some impressive wins of late. Cincinnati might be a little bit more battle-tested with some of their wins. But obviously a lot on the line for both teams. You got division titles. You've got home field. You've got first-round buys. And I mean, somebody has to win here. It's Allen versus Burrow. It's certainly a AFC championship game preview, possibly. It's the last Monday night game of the season, and the Buffalo Bills are 1-point favorites. 49 is the over-under, and give me who you think.
You know what this game reminds me of, and I think it's going to live up to I don't know if it'll be that high of scoring, but it'll live up to that hype. Anyone remember the Rams-Chiefs Monday night game from about 3 years ago?
That was like, what was it, 48-45?
54-51 was the final.
I remember.
I don't know that we'll go that high, but I think we're going to have that level of epic proportions on Monday night. This is going to be one of the best Monday night games in years. And one of the things that impresses me the most when it's time to rise to the occasion, the Cincinnati Bengals are always there. They already have a win over the Kansas City Chiefs this year. I mean, as do the Bills. But, I like the Bengals in this game at their home field. You know what? They are a team that is playing angry. They're playing like a team possessed after losing that Super Bowl. They got off to a bit of an ugly 4-4 start. They've since won 7 in a row. And they look like a team that can absolutely win the Super Bowl this year. Joe Burrow's on another planet right now. And you know what? Josh Allen's been a little bit interesting this year because he's been a little careless with the football this year. And I don't think you're going to get away with being careless against the Bengals defense, against the Bengal offense, if you will. And I think the Bengals are going to take this at home.
All right, fair enough. I mean, certainly the numbers aren't Josh Allen-like from the last couple of years. I think I spoke about that on prior Sportswire radio shows. So there's a point to be made. And Allen's got 13 interceptions this year. So, I mean, the numbers they're good, but they're not what we saw from prior years. So there's a point to be made that he hasn't been as invincible, but that's here nor there. John Gonzalez says, Tom, it's a done deal when it comes to him winning. John, I pray for you that's the case. I pray because we're going to have a lot of meaningful football. Well, he's saying it is, so I'm going to have to take his word for now with that. He likes the Bengals. I might be the only one, but I was more impressed with Buffalo last year. I mean, I would say that Buffalo had more impressive wins last year, although I think Buffalo has the better record. I think Buffalo was 11-6 last year, and this year they're 12-3. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure on that. The one issue with Cincinnati is Collins is out. John also reminds me that the Buffalo teams with Marv Levy were better and more talented than this Buffalo team. I didn't really get to see those Buffalo teams, so I couldn't make the comment. I would probably say there's probably more Hall of Famers on those Buffalo teams, like Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas, Bruce Smith, Jim Kelly. I think
Thurman. I don't know if he's all paid, but Thurman Thomas is a great running back.
I mentioned Thurman Thomas,
Andre Reed.
Pete Metzeler, right, was on those teams. Steve Tasker. I mean, they had some good players. I don't know.
Running back Kenneth Davis. He was really good for a backup.
Yeah, they had some great. I mean, I guess you, John. I'm going to defer to guys like John and Chris on that. I mean, I do think that they're both very good football teams, but I was going to go with Buffalo originally, but I thought about it. And Cincinnati, to me, I think has had more impressive wins. I know Tennessee's not great right now, but to me, they went on the road in Tennessee, beat them. They went on and were able to beat Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay convincingly. They took care of the Panthers rather convincingly. Panthers have played good football. They beat my beloved Steelers, of course, on the road, and the Steelers have played very good football in the second half. Kansas City, they have a win over. So I mean, I think the Chiefs here. I mean, I don't think they're going to get the number one spot. Certainly, of course, they won a Bengals win, but I think the Bengals, to me, they've just had more impressive wins of late. And again, I look at, to me, impressiveness, and I think there's a point that John made. I kind of agree with. Allen's been good, but he hasn't been as impressive as maybe last year or the year prior. And I kind of think Cincinnati in this spot. Look, I would say if it was in Orchard Park, I think Buffalo would win this game. But I think here's Cincinnati in this spot. I think, was it Chris that said Cincinnati is angry right now? And I kind of think here that's going to ring true here. And I think that the Bengals are going to find a way here to get a win, but I think it'll be a great game. I want to say 28-24, something like that. I think it'll be warm also, so I think that both teams will move the ball well. But we've got 2 games left here before we got the closing thoughts here. And the Brute Force Brad Weiss. Now, with this matchup, maybe you do want to have the upset alert to keep on there because obviously I'm talking about those beloved teams. Speaking of Monday Night Football teams, and speaking of teams that certainly have made history in the second half, and I had a conversation with somebody else a few days ago. I might get it for this one here. We are speaking about those Indianapolis Colts, and certainly they're trying. I mean, they've had a merry-go-round, the merry-go-round of quarterback. It's late, and I couldn't think of anything, and I'm trying to sell the Brute Force here on this one. But I mean, the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, boy, what a fascinating team! What a fascinating season! And I mean, certainly they've made history for the wrong seasons, but who knows there? Maybe Jeff Saturday could be playing for something. Maybe he's playing for a better job in an announcing booth somewhere. Maybe he's going to stay with the Colts. Who knows there? But the New York Football Giants are at home here in a win that they really need here in this matchup. They are 5.5-point favorites, and I believe I see here 38.5 is the over-under. But Giants, I think, have played a little bit better football the last couple of weeks. I think that they showed something against the Vikings last weekend, and the Colts, the Brute Force. I mean, certainly, maybe you see something that a lot of people don't. Maybe you relate to Jeff Saturday. Maybe you relate to the quarterback situation. Maybe you say, you know what, Giants are they're in over their heads here, and they're slumping. And do you want to go back to the upset alert? Do you want to maybe consider, maybe thinking about it? You know, Giants are in a spot they're not used to. Maybe Barkley doesn't have the game that he's thinking of. Maybe Jones runs the ball and fumbles a couple of times. I don't know, the Brute Force. You know, maybe you want to gain a game back on John Gonzalez playing for third. I mean, so who do you think here?
Anything else?
But I got nothing. Who do you like, the Brute Force?
You know, Tom, I got a few things to say. Number one, if you guys don't remember, okay, I was the only one who picked the Colts last week, all right? And
I know, you did.
I tried to get a game on John last week with the Colts, and the Colts did nothing but obviously devastate me on Monday night. Okay, now you want to talk about Jeff Saturday. Okay, Jeff Saturday, he's coming back to the New York, New Jersey area where he worked in the ESPN studios, and I think coming back to New York, I think, ESPN's going to be like, hey, Jeff, how you doing? Everything all right? I think they're going to try to persuade him to come back to ESPN because he actually did a really nice job when he was on there. I'll give him credit. I actually liked watching him on ESPN because certainly he shouldn't really want to continue to be the Colts coach. They stink. And ultimately, I think Nick Foles is starting again, and that certainly doesn't excite me. So I'm going to take the Giants. Obviously, I wasn't, Tom's sales pitch was not going to get me here. The Giants will do enough. They're much better than the Colts, in my opinion. And they're playing for something, obviously, to get in the playoffs. They have a really good chance of it. This is the game they got to have to really solidify their spot, hopefully. So I'm taking the Giants. I'm not even going to hesitate. Okay, and I think the thing that'll happen for the Colts is that Jeff Saturday will see his ESPN bosses and friends who will come to support him, and I think it'll persuade him to want to be back in the ESPN booth at the end of the year. So that is what will happen for the Colts. Nothing else.
All right, well, that was some interesting points there. And John Gonzalez, just a funny line before I get to Chris. Stephen A. Smith will be the Broncos coach. Who knows at this point right now, right? You never know, right? But, Chris, Giants need a win here. Giants need a win. Giants win, and they're in. Colts, obviously, they're playing for something else. It's going to be an interesting offseason, I'm sure. We'll cover it. I don't have anything else more to say about the Colts. I tried my best to sell Brad on them, so I'm going to let you pick this matchup here. And Giants are 5.5-point favorites. Sunday, 1:00, and give me your thoughts.
Giants at home. This is an easy pick. They're still, I think, a win, and they lock up a playoff spot.
Yep.
So
Yep.
This is an easy pick. I mean, you got to go with the Giants here. Colts have looked horrible, even with Foles quarterbacking. So Giants, easy pick.
Yeah, I get that. And John Gonzalez is ready. He wants to move on. He does not seem happy about my sales job. But Justin, Giants win and they're in. Colts are certainly playing for other things. We'll see what happens in their quarterback situation, their coaching situation. But do the Giants get it done and return to the postseason for the first time here since 2016 with the win?
They do. What was the spread?
I have 5.5. I have 38.5 as the over-under.
The Colts will cover. I will say that. The Giants don't listen. The Giants don't win blowout games, right?
No, they're
going to
don't.
find a way to make. They're going to find a way to make something interesting. The Colts have been okay. Last week they actually played pretty well defensively. Got a couple of turnovers.
Painful game to watch, though. I was straining my eyes the entire
their
time.
Offense just couldn't do anything. And if their offense was slowing down Justin Herbert, what are they going to do to the Giants? Right? That makes this game a little bit more interesting. Giants are going to win like 13-10. That's what's going to happen.
You know what?
Maybe.
The Colts have won the last 4 meetings, and the Giants have not beaten the Colts since 2002. So that's a little more selling of the Colts. Just saying.
Pre-Eli Manning. That is
right.
I would imagine some of that does to the luck years. And maybe Peyton was quarterback for one of those games, if I were to guess. And the Giants, during most of that time, haven't been that good other than the 2 Super Bowl teams. That would be my point. I do want to give a shout-out to Ron Laird, who has joined us here very last minute. He says, sorry, I'm late. Go Bucks. Yeah, I picked the Bucks, Ron, but I'm really not confident in this Bucks team. I love you. You've been a supporter of mine for 3.5 years, but I'm going with the Bucks, but begrudgingly, he does like the Giants. John Gonzalez sarcastically tells me to stop on the Colts sales job. He also says Saturday will be back on First Take. Yeah, he probably will be. I still think that he also wants me to get to the Jets game, and he likes the Giants. All right, so that leaves us here one more game, the Brute Force, and that is, of course, our New York Jets and the Seattle Seahawks. And we see an old friend here, though, who is certainly slumping a little bit here. He's certainly come back down to earth, and that is Geno Smith. And, of course, as a bonus point, a long, long time ago, many, many moons ago, Pete Carroll, our former coach, for basically a cameo, a cup of coffee. And Jets here definitely need a win. Looks like we're going to see Mike White in action here. And hopefully that sparks us, because I hope to never see Zach Wilson again as a starting quarterback, at least for the New York Jets. But Jets, still, despite everything, if they win the next 2 games and get some help, they could be in the postseason as well. And they are 2-point favorites. So I have here 2-point favorites here on the road. I have 42 as the over-under. It's a 4 o'clock matchup. And, I mean, it's, again, an old friend we're going to see. I wonder what the motivation will be there. But we desperately need to win the brute force. And I am hoping that we'll see a little bit better football now that Mike White will be in there. And, I mean, who do you think wins in this matchup between the Jets and Seahawks, and certainly Geno Smith's vaunted return against us here, although we'll be in Seattle for it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know Geno Smith deep down wants to get back at the Jets and beat them bad this week. But he won't be able to. And that's because he has to go against the Jets defense. And the Jets defense will be ready to go. And listen, the only reason why – listen, and we all know it. The only reason why the Jets have not at least competed the last few weeks is because of Zach Wilson. Okay,
Yep. Yeah.
He has been such a disaster, such a tragic embarrassment to New York as a state, the United States as a country,
And New Jersey. And New Jersey.
and New Jersey. I mean, I say this about the Knicks. I mean, Zach Wilson, all right, has been just as tragic and embarrassing in his performances. I mean, it was absolutely disgusting to see what he put on display against the Jaguars. So to get Mike White back, it almost feels like we have some amazing quarterback because it's such an upgrade from him. So listen, he's going to play his game, Mike White. He's going to play under control. He's going to make good passes. He's not going to force anything. He'll play relatively smart. And I think that will win this game for the Jets, because all they need to do really, in my opinion, all they need to do is score 20 points. If they get to 20, I think that's what will win them this game. And I think that the defense will hold Seattle to under 20 points. And I think that the Jets will do just enough. I think the final score will be 21-17. The Jets will win.
All right, from your mouth to God's ears here, the brute force. And I have a bunch of comments, but we'll get to them last. Chris, I am so anxious to hear what you have to say. And, of course, I'll hear what you and Sharman say tomorrow night on Sportswire, because I think I'm live. I'm doing an opening for I got an AEW thing, and we'll talk about that another time. But Jets here are 2-point favorites. Geno Smith returns against us, but Mike White, I mean, I'm kind of going with Brad here. When Mike White has been in there, he has moved the ball well. He has looked pretty good. And I kind of feel a little bit more confidence than him with certainly Zach Wilson or anybody else. But we really need a win here. This is pretty much like do or die. This is as much as do or die as we can get. Tell me what you think here in this matchup between the Jets and Seahawks. And really, it's pretty much an elimination game, though, for both teams, because the Seahawks are in the same boat as us. So basically, the loser of this game is done. The winner goes on from the week to maybe see if they can eke out a trip to the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a lot riding on this game, not just in the teams. You got to remember with the players too. Mike White is back in. He's playing for a contract. Geno Smith, he's playing for a contract too. He's a free agent as well. So, but when you look at the team, I think Geno Smith's numbers are really bad when the other team is blitzing against him. Not that the Jets blitz a lot, but they do. But they can get the pass rush going. So that's the key of the game to get to Geno Smith. If you could get to him, rattle him up a little bit, he'll start throwing some picks easily. So I like the Jets in this game, especially with Mike White. Without Mike White, no, I didn't feel I didn't feel as confident whatsoever. But with Mike White, excuse me, I feel really confident that they're going to pull this one out. Not a blowout or anything, but they should be able to win, because to me, they're the better team in this situation. With Mike White, they're the better team. They got the better defense. Offensively, they're either as good or better than them as well. So I'm gonna take the Jets on the road, 27-17.
All right, fair enough here. I mean, I'll certainly hope and pray for that. But, Justin, Jets and Seahawks, 2 teams here that desperately need wins. I think both teams are kind of at this point going in the same direction. I'd say maybe Seattle is in a little bit more of a tailspin just because of the anemic football I've seen from them, whether it was against the 49ers, the Chiefs, even the Raiders. But certainly Geno Smith was an NFL comeback of the year story. Still might get it. Still had a very strong season. But Mike White is coming in there, and I do think the offense is a little bit more inspired when he is in there. But both teams need a win. And who do you think gets it here? It's a 405 matchup. Jets are 2-point favorites. 42 is the over-under.
Yeah. So the magic number for the Jets here is 21. And if the Jets think about it, if the Jets would have scored 21 points in each of their 8 losses, they'd be 11-4. So it just tells you how awful their offense has been, and their inconsistency at play at quarterback. Right, the early season, you had Joe Flacco to Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's struggles and not taking accountability, getting benched for Mike White. Mike White showing some magic, then getting hurt. Back to Zach Wilson in an absolute disaster. Mike White's back now, and against a very, very poor Seattle defense that really can't stop a nosebleed when it comes to the run game. I really got to see the Jets get back to the running game here. There's no reason Zonovan Knight and Michael Carter cannot gash the Seattle defense. I mean, they were getting run all over by Detroit a few weeks ago. And they have a solid run game. So, got to get back to the run game. I have confidence in Mike White making some plays. But here's one thing to remember. The last couple of times we put in Mike White, it was to not suck. For the first time, there's expectations on Mike White. There's expectations of Mike White getting the Jets to the postseason, or at least winning the next 2 games. I know they need some help from New England losing a game here. But there's expectations on Mike White for the first time. And you know what? And I think he's up to the challenge. I think he's going to be cool, calm, and collected in the pocket. And that's one of the things that you need as a quarterback and your leadership skills. You need to be able to be calm, and you need to not get frazzled under pressure. And I think that was one of the biggest failures, aside from how poorly he played. That's one of the biggest failures of Zach Wilson. He plays too much with his hair on fire. Looks to be too perfect at times, and he's overthinking it. Do more, think less, and I think Mike White does a good job at that. And I think White's gonna have a solid game, and I think the Jets are gonna win this.
Boy, I am praying because I even till I get to everybody's comments, I still don't know what to pick. But I'm going to give my reasons as to why I pick, and I'm going to go with a gun to my head here. John Gonzalez says Geno ran out of steam. Yeah, I mean, his second half wasn't as impressive. Numbers are still good, though. He'll be somebody that I'm sure somebody is going to want to sign. And John Gonzalez does like the Jets. Ron Laird says taking the Seahawks in an upset, although I could see the reasons why. John Gonzalez says send the Mormon back to Utah. I'm going to plead the fifth on that because we are certainly going to leave that for somebody else. He thinks Geno will be inspired. Sauce will have a big game. That's kind of was originally my thought with Ron Laird, thought that Geno Smith will be really motivated. He'll have a ton to play for, and the Seahawks will blow out the Jets. But I kind of do think that Mike White, when he's in there, this is a Jet team that also feels inspired. And it's also, I think, one thing to keep an eye on here is why I think I'm going to bite the bullet and go with the Jets, although my gut tells me Seattle's going to win. The reason I think the Jets are going to win, I think it's good for them to get away from the tri-state area. It's good for them to go thousands of miles away and to go into an environment where they don't have any pressure on them. They obviously know that the media, all that stuff, and I think that those guys are going to rally behind Mike White. I think they like being there. I think there's still a lot of weapons around this team, and I think that John Gonzalez makes the point. Jets defense played okay last week. It's not been the defense that's been the issue. It's been basically the quarterback players. Salah's decisions, I think, to an extent, against the Lions, and I think that the defense here will be able to keep Geno under wraps because even in our slump in the second half, defense has not played poorly. I mean, we played okay defensively against Buffalo. Defense played very well against New England. I think the defense makes enough plays. Mike White knows what he's doing. To Justin's point, for the first time, we're expecting Mike White to not just not suck, but to win. I kind of think he rises to the occasion. Do the Jets make the playoffs or they win next week? I don't know. But I know for this week, I kind of think we've got the right opponent at the right time. Some of these teams we play, whether it's the Vikings, the Lions, the Jaguars, haven't caught them at the right time. I think we've got the right opponent here, and I think that
I also think too. The defense should be a little bit embarrassed for last week. I know they only gave up 19 points to Jacksonville, but at times it looks like they just weren't trying out there.
First down after first down, they were basically.
And I think they're going to bounce back in a big way. The only counterpoint to what John has up here about Sauce having a big game, it's hard for Sauce to have a big game when they don't even bother attempting to throw at him. Like he's gotten that dominant. He's gotten that dominant though. But that speaks to how great he is. That he's been so dominant as a rookie. They don't bother throwing to his side, unless they recognize zone coverage.
All right, well, you know what? We'll certainly find out, and I think John's point with maybe Geno Smith will take those chances. And before we get to closing thoughts here, John says, good night, guys. Great job. Feels good to still be on top. Bring it on, Mr. Napkins. And boy, this guy, Anthony Finkel, and I keep saying my gut tells me this guy may just luck into it because this guy is going to probably go eeny, meeny, miny, mo when he's doing like his New Year's ball drop. And I'm telling you, I know Anthony Finkel. I know this guy like a book. I know him for over 7 years. I know how he thinks. He's going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And I'm telling you, that's what he's going to do. And this guy may just win it, John. I'm telling you, it's going to come down to one game either way. But that's all great stuff. Of course, if you like what you hear from us and you want to tell us some of your picks, you can do that anytime for us on Facebook at Sportswire Radio, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. Also, make sure to follow the Sportatorium boys. Of course, the boys have an NFL show each and every week, and they have been great supporters of ours. So I want to make sure that we plug the guys. Also, you can do that on Twitter at Sportnarium Pod. Also, the Sportatorium podcast on, is that Anchor, the Brewforce they're on now? I think Instagram. No, I saw that, but I saw another one, another icon. I know the Sportatorium podcast on Instagram. I got that, but I think maybe YouTube is because your color is like poor. So I think that was the YouTube link. But yes, make sure you put the guys on, and we have to get.
Everybody knocking them down today.
I can't see the light. I have 20/20 vision. I couldn't see the YouTube light. That's all. Listen, we love the guys. I speak to the guys from time to time. They have great shows. I check them out as much as I can each and every week. But certainly I want to wish John Gonzalez and everybody else a happy new year. And Chris, I want to give you the floor first. Obviously, the last time we're going to be on in 2022. Hopefully, we'll have a great 23 ahead. I believe it will. I really have enjoyed all the shows you've put for us on Sportswire and everything you've done for us and all the great stuff on the Friday show. So I turn it over to you. Anything you want to say, and floor is yours, and Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year, guys. Appreciate the show as always. Tom, thank you for everything you've done for me and for the two shows I co-host. Appreciate all the support. You guys as well. Just looking forward to, man, next year. Looking forward to the NFL playoffs, NHL, kicking into high gear once the
Metropolitan Division. Oh, it's already kicked into high gear. I mean, we have Randy on him scoring a few weeks, but it's
in a row now.
Devils won tonight, so I mean, NHL is heating
up already, so that's great, And baseball is going to be starting in about a month and a half, so that's the other thing which we'll definitely be talking about on Talking Rivals. Check us out there. Also on Liftoff, hopefully we'll be talking about the Jets winning this week against Seattle. Check us out there, and we'll see. You can follow me at CP7NY on Twitter. And the shows, just check us out on wherever you find your podcast. Look for Talking Rivals and look for Liftoff, a Jets football podcast.
Of course, and we always play it on sportnarium.com/player. Thank you for the plugs each week in the podcast. I appreciate that. And Justin, want to give you the floor, my friend. Obviously, want to wish you and your family a happy new year. Also, thank you for the baseball banter shows. I actually listened to it like 7 times. I basically wore it out because I was live so many times. And what was great about your show this week was it was like 45 minutes. So I was able to use it as an interval because I went on like twice, I think 2 or 3 different days this week. So it kind of happened that way. So I like to use these shows kind of as intervals, almost to be my warm-up. So I always appreciate that. But want to give you the floor, my friend. Anything you want to share, the 3 locks of the week, and anything else on your mind, and fire away, my friend.
All right, Tom, thank you for another great year here at Sportswire Radio. As we close the chapter of 2022, want to wish everybody a happy new year. Be safe this weekend. Hey, I know it really hasn't gotten as much play this year as we talked about last year, but college football playoff tomorrow with TCU against Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia. I don't expect to beat Georgia, but you know what? Anything can happen, right? So I would actually be more than excited about an Ohio State Michigan national championship. We'll see what happens. I think ultimately it'll be Georgia, Michigan, and we'll see what ends up happening there. And a quick NBA note. I mean, is there anybody hotter right now than the Brooklyn Nets?
Oh my goodness!
I mean, 10 straight wins. Play the Hornets tomorrow. This is the team that I think this is finally the team that we envision when KD and Kyrie signed up together. You know what it's taken? It's taken a real head coach. What Jacque Vaughn has done with the guys is nothing short of amazing, and he's got to be front and center right now for NBA Coach of the Year because you've seen the drastic turnaround and what he's done to put the Nets in the best position to win. So, I'm really pumped up about that going into 2023. Obviously, baseball banter will be back as more news garners. Like we've said, it's a very slow. Like I heard you before with Rob, it's a very, very slow time right now. And a lot of the big free agents are off the board, right? Obviously, the Carlos Correa situation is kind of weird, but we've kind of heard that there's specific quirks that Steve Cohen's working out, and this is more than agent front office thing. This has got lawyers involved. So obviously, with the holidays, it's tough to kind of get those things going. So maybe that's why it's taking longer than normal, but. If more news drops, we'll hit it up. Hall of Fame vote, I think, should be soon. So that will be an episode right there.
Yep.
Other than that, again, wish everybody a happy and healthy New Year and stay safe this weekend. You can follow me at JGNelly12 and at BBallBanterSM on Twitter.
Absolutely great stuff as well from Justin, and thank you, Justin, for all you've done for the year. Yes, I think Rob and I spoke about the Hall ofAme vote. I think that's in either 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll maybe.
You're right. I'm not 100% sure about the date, but
we'll do a segment on that.
Time at least.
Yeah,
if not before then.
Yeah, we'll see if somebody gets it. I think Rob and I were kind of going back and forth on that, but we'll figure that all out. Of course, NFL coverage next week, wire to wire, and then we'll get into obviously playoffs and NBA. We'll swing back into the NBA very soon, which I know the Brute Force really can't wait on, which is, I'm sure I'm being facetious here, but we have definitely not saved the best of us, but we have saved the biggest for last. That is the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, who's definitely winning a lot on the basketball court these days, I have noticed, with, of course, the Plainview Boys JFK basketball team. And, of course, our Golden Eagles look like they're back on track as well. So it's a good time to be in the basketball world. I also saw you doing some stuff with the Long Island Nets I saw on Instagram as well. So you're all over the place. I mean, pretty soon I'm going to see you more places out there on the court and keep it going out there, the Brute Force. But one more time here in 2022, I give you the floor here for some closing thoughts and anything you want to plug, share, say, my friend. Floor is yours.
Yeah, on to 2023. So thank you guys for another great year and week of the Sports Report here on Sportzwire Radio. Chris, Justin, always a pleasure to talk with you guys. So thank you to everybody who supports us, of course. This is now, I believe, Tom, this is going to be our 4th year.
Yep, our 4-year anniversary for Sports Report / Sportswire is in January, and we'll be celebrating that. Yep.
Yeah, so, it's been great. It's been a fun time doing this show. Obviously, thank you again to all the support. Of course, follow our man, John Gonzalez, Sports Authorities Group on Facebook. And thank you to everybody who supports the show. If you want to support me, you can certainly follow me on social media, Bradley Weiss on Facebook, at Brad Weiss 20 on Twitter, and searching at BWeiss20 or Coach Brad Weiss on Instagram. Speaking of coaching, you guys hear my voice is a little off today. That is because I've done a lot of yelling the last 2 days. My JV team was on the court in a Great Neck South Winter Tournament. They won the first game. Unfortunately, yesterday we lost by 2 in double overtime to a friend of mine, actually, who was coaching at the other school. But the boys fought hard. It was a tough loss. A few guys getting emotional, but it's a good learning experience. We're 4-4 going into the new year, so we're excited about the potential to, change course here. I think we're playing a lot better. Last year, my boys were 3-5 in the.
I remember.
And they went on a big run in the second half. So we're starting to see the signs of that. Our varsity team also won the tournament. They won both games, and they're 6-3 on the year, so they're doing great things. So I'm really excited. So POB JFK, you can follow us at POB Hawks Basketball, or follow me for the JV team at Coach Brad Weiss. To get to a few other things, Tom, you mentioned it. I was at the Coliseum a few days ago doing a Long Island Nets clinic on the court. That was pretty cool.
That was cool. I saw that on Instagram. I was like, wow, that was impressive. That was impressive.
Yeah, to be on the court, to to kind of be in that environment was really cool. The kids loved it. They had a great time. Of course, head clinician Kelly Dempsey was running the show.
Yep.
Richardson on hand. So it was really exciting to see. And then, we got to tour the locker rooms and get the buffet that the players were having. So it was a really cool experience. I saw LiAngelo Ball's jersey for the Greensboro Swarm. So a lot of cool experiences there. But Long Island Nets.
And you better get there when Ryan Terrell is playing, because I don't know if you saw last week on Instagram.
He's coming early February. He's coming. So
he's coming on big. Did you see last week? He had, I think, 29 points or 27 points he had. He's coming on. It's no longer a novelty.
He might be in the NBA soon. So looking forward to that.
I think he's got a shot.
I want to get to that game on February 4th, I believe it is, at the Coliseum. He'll be here. So I'll be getting tickets, obviously. I work for the Nets. You should follow them at Long Island Nets on Instagram and all social media pages. So next thing I want to discuss, too, is, as you mentioned earlier, Tom, our Golden Eagles.
Absolutely.
Golden Eagles got a win against Tom's John Jay College Bloodhounds. Yeah. The Bloodhounds are having themselves a really tough season.
Oh my! You know what? And I don't want to. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, because I know a coach is going to hear this. But I know John Perez on the telecast a couple weeks back, when they were in conference play, a non-conference play, was saying, "Well, it's just about going into CUNY play, and they scheduled a certain way." But the way they've played in some of these games at Brew Force, I mean, I know they were playing shorthanded with guys, without guys, and guys are playing different spots, but that's a bad spot. That's a bad spot.
Yeah, it's tough. Obviously tough record to start the year, but hopefully the new year brings them a new season, hopefully a new chapter, but we'll see. But for our Golden Eagles, I know 4-6 doesn't look great, but considering that they haven't played with their best player for the whole first half of the season, they've really withstood the storm that they got hit with. New coaching staff as well.
And Timmy Hurto is missed time as well, don't forget.
Yes. Yeah, and Coach Uhl's new to it. And, I think the guys have played well. They've had some tough losses, but to win this game and to go into 2023 4-6 with a little bit of momentum, good win against Yeshiva, good win against John Jay. And now
played very well against Lehman. Don't forget, Lehman's probably the best or the second best team in the CUNY.
Yeah. So listen, they've played well of late. Hopefully, Alec will be back in 2023 for them. That would be huge. They got a big game to start the year. They're playing SUNY Old Westbury.
Yep.
1-1 as
Tuesday night.
On Tuesday night at home. So I'm hoping that will go well for them. But they're getting a lot of contributions. You got Spencer having a good season. You also saw Justin Turner win Rookie of the Week a few weeks ago. So that was big for them. I mean, Gordiello had a good game against John Jay.
I think that was Gordiello's best game of the season, but that was the Gordiello, and I told you this, and I told Matt Hurt this, by the way, off the air. I said that was the Jake Gordiello I saw in the second half of the season last year.
Even when I went to see them at Farmingdale, I was kind of, wondering, where was that aggressive Gordiello? I think that you saw that against John Jay, and that'll be good for them going forward. Matt Hurt, and then, like you said, Tom, a few guys we don't normally see, like Nick Nemekis got on the court in this game, so we're proud of Nick. And
how about your old teammate Mark Roberts Jr. was back out there?
Yep. So
Chris Connors was out there for a few minutes as well.
Another Nassau County kid. So
yep.
So certainly the guys got out there, and they got a great win. So I'm excited for them. And speaking of former St. Joe's teammates, Tom Bryce, my game on Tuesday night is actually against Joe Santoro, who will be.
Oh. Joe is the man, by the way. Joe, he likes, if I post about being outside with a ski mask on, Joe likes our stuff. Joe's the man, by the way. Joe's a big supporter.
Joe and I are coaching against each other in a big game on Tuesday.
Well,
So,
Joe, we got to get on Sportswire. One of these days when you have free time, not now, but down the road when the weather warms up, in April or May, Joe's a guy that we got to get some guys on. Joe's one of those because Joe's always
awesome.
supporting us. Joe's
He's
a great
awesome.
guy.
Joe's awesome. He knows sports. He's a big Patriots fan. So he's not great with Patriots, being a Patriots fan, but
Matt Hurt has the same problem.
Right. So listen, they can relate there, but. Looking forward to competing against Joe. They got a really good team at Valley Stream Central, so we'll be playing them on Tuesday. But, yeah, Joe's coming on the show. I'm hoping that we could get Ryan Terrell on the show at some point as well.
That's going to be – I think he's the big time now, Brad. I don't know if we're getting him. Let's hope for Joe Santoro. Let's get Jesse Winter. Let's get those people that we know will speak to us.
Those are our goals for 2023, hopefully on Sportswire, getting some guys on the show. And the last thing I'll say, I'll cut it with this to finish, all right? Ladies and gentlemen, don't act like I did not tell you, I did not warn you, I did not inspire you to understand who the New York Knicks are. Because I told you, everybody's like, oh, they're on a 7-game win. Oh, they're winning 7 games in a row. And I told you, I said, don't get too excited, don't get hyped up, because what do? When they play well, they find ways to crash quick. And what have they done? They've lost 5 games in a row.
And the way they lost in Dallas and then San Antonio – I had somebody stop me in the street. You know what he said? Don't talk about it. What did he mean? The New York Knicks. I swear, I had a guy, ex-Brooklyn College volleyball coach. He stopped me in the street. He goes like this, don't you dare. Don't you bring them up. That's what he told me.
Yeah, but you know what? Listen, don't act surprised. Don't act like you're shocked.
I'm not saying
we need to stop. By the way, we need to stop and we need to marvel that Luka Doncic performance. That might be one of the greatest performances of the last.
I don't know if I've seen that. Was it 60, 21, and 10? It was like 20.
It was an unbelievable performance, but guess what? The reason why they ended up winning the game is because the New York Knicks could not make free throws in the fourth.
Agreed.
The New York Knicks made dumb turnovers and they committed dumb fouls at the end of the game, which allowed the Mavericks. And you should never, when you're winning by 9 with a little over 30 seconds left, you should never lose a game. And yet the New York Knicks found ways to lose, and it lies on the shoulders, ladies and gentlemen, of the head coach, Tom Thibodeau, who right now his seat should be warming up right now.
The footsteps are there. They're there.
Listen, first of all, these guys are playing heavy minutes. It's the same system with Tom Thibodeau in the past. He's draining his players. They're not playing at a high level at the end of the game because they're exhausted. They're dead. And ultimately, that's rearing its ugly head right now, and the Knicks are headed for what exactly I told you. They show you some prosperity, and then they crash, and they're headed for that 10 seed kind of team, and a disappointment. Jalen Brunson is hurt, R.J. Barrett is hurt, and guess what? This is the last thing I'll leave you with, Tom Bryce. The New York Knicks right now, this is the perfect time to trade Julius Randle. I said it. I'm going to say it right now. He's playing really good basketball. He might be
you've revamped his value.
Well, I'll tell you what. In 2 weeks, when the NFL regular season ends, and we'll go more into basketball because we'll have more time because we're not going to be picking as many games. I mean, that's I'm sure a topic that we'll be speaking about as we're getting almost at the halfway mark toward the All-Star break. I'm sure,
like you said about Thibodeau burning his guys out. It's funny. It's the complete opposite with Jock Vaughn. He's always saying after the game, I wish I could get KD more rest because I want to keep him fresh.
Yeah, well, Thibodeau, unfortunately, he's kind of like the John Tortorella of the NBA. That's kind of my equation without the championship, but their lifespans don't last very long.
Burns
but we'll certainly. Yeah, Burns guys out. Certainly we'll figure all that out here. And of course, everybody, please follow the Brute Force Brad Weiss on Instagram at BWeiss20, Coach Brad Weiss, also Brad Weiss20 on Twitter, also Bradley Weiss on Snapchat, Facebook Bradley Weiss, and make sure you follow, of course, all the great people here like Justin and Chris. And I want to take a couple of minutes before we get out here to thank a bunch of people. I want to thank Randy Dillon, who's been with us here. Randy will be back in the new year. Randy is away. Also want to thank Billy McInerney. Billy's one of the original guys from the Sports Report. Want to thank him. Billy will be back also soon. Also want to thank Rob Maraska at the top of the show, John Gonzalez, Anthony Finkel, all kidding aside, Joey Bostrom. Want to thank Joey. Joey's been a friend of mine for 13 plus years. He's always supported us in some capacity. Ernest Dove. Want to thank Ernest Dove. Ernest is with us here as a contributor. He does a whole different such things for us. He's a big person to have. I want to thank also the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast guys, Chris Belcher and the Young Buck Andy York, who will be with us on Monday for a special Raw pre-show. They'll be in Nashville. Also want to thank some of our other shows. I want to thank the Pinstripe Chronicles, Bobby Tats in the gang. Bobby Tats, the only other person as old as Rob Maraska. Also want to thank the Sit Down Marks. Of course, the guys are always plugging us. Dirty Bird was a Falcons fan. My condolences to Dirty Bird. Also Primo and AJ. Also want to give a shout out to the Rewind Wrestling Podcast, who's on our station. Also Neil Villapiano and the Devil's State of Mind. And of course, Neil is also on Instagram, and he plugs us so graciously. The Wrestling with the Truth guys, who gave me like the longest intro and thank you on a podcast I think I've gotten. Thank you guys. I want to thank the Work in Progress guys. Also the Mayor of Canton, who does like the food reviews for us. He's becoming like the Dave Portnoy of Twitter food reviews. So want to give a shout out to the Mayor of Canton, Glenn Abbott, with the Piece of Business show. I also want to thank Andy from the Grappling with Canada show. Andy, of course, had spent some time away. He's back with us. I also want to thank Baseball Banter, Sharman, your co-host, Patrick Trotty, with the Talking Rivals. I also want to thank Mother Lynn and Chris with their, sometimes they do a podcast for us, the Upper Deck show. I also want to take the time out and thank some of the wrestling companies that have supported us. I want to thank the LWF. I want to thank Odyssey Pro Wrestling. I want to thank KOW. I want to thank Nonstop Action Wrestling, GT Ministries. I want to thank also Blackheart Wrestling. I want to thank Valley Wrestling Connection, the Wrestling War Zone. I want to thank also the Five Towns Athletics Department. I want to thank, of course, our guys at the Golden Eagles. And very quickly on the boys, I mean, the Brute Force, I think that the record is very, very deceiving because the way they've played the last 5 or 6 games, that's the team I think that we're going to see in the Skyline Conference. And I was speaking with some of the guys, and I really think this is the team that could very well, nobody wants to match up with the Skyline Conference because it's a team that can run 8-9 guys. And the other guy you forgot to mention, Xavier Allen. That's the guy that I think that's going to wind up being the number one option for this team. That's the guy that I think is going to open things up for Spencer, where Spencer was getting double teamed a lot last year. I don't think that's going to happen as much. So I think that that's going to be the guy I keep an eye on. Obviously, Matt's brother Tim, Liam Sheehy, another guy who's coming, giving us some big minutes. I mean, yeah, that's a guy I think to keep it because he's almost kind of like a sixth man for us. He's a guy that's going to come in there, and I think that he's going to do some big, big things for us. So keep an eye on him as well. Also want to give a shout out to Alec Tabata. Hopefully Alec gets back there soon. There's been different reports that we've heard from him. Nick Nemekis. Got to give a big shout out to Nick Nemekis. I promised Nick Nemekis that I would give him a big shout out on Sportswire. Nick was fired up, and he was like, thank you. And we were speaking off there. I won't say what Nick and I said, but I want to thank the guys for their support. Jason Gordies, I want to thank him. Coach Vicina. I want to thank Coach Alfaro. The John Jay program, although I really can't talk John Jay. They're not playing good this year. So, I mean, I feel bad, but I really can't put a team. I also want to thank Wrestling Championship Entertainment. If I forget about them, they would shoot me. They have been massive supporters of us on Sportswire Radio. Of course, I want to thank Nicholas Crenson, Sean Jovi, Craven Rage, Darkfire. I want to thank also Kodak Kid. I mean, there's so many people from that company. I want to thank the owner of the company, Liz, for supporting us. I want to thank Jarrell Diaz and Darrow Johnson, the owners of the Wrestling Warzone Connection. I also want to thank the Nomad, Dalton Garrett. I want to thank Champagne Charlie. I want to thank everybody that's involved in CCW. If I don't mention James Barris and CCW, they will shoot us. I also want to make sure I thank also some of the people over at RZW and C2K who's been elated this. I mean, there's so many people that I could certainly list. I want to thank the Lawman Kyle Kennedy, RPD, the world champion there of TNT. I mean, it's a long list of people. I want to make sure I thanked everybody, and I'll have one more stream tomorrow. So if there was somebody missing, you'll get a shout out tomorrow. And Coach Drizel, I want to mention as well. I want to make sure from the Five Towns men's basketball program, I mentioned him. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I don't have much of a voice left, so we're going to end on that. Also, Wildfire, Nate Reese, I want to mention ALP, Lucy. I want to mention also as well Gareth Angel, Disciple, my guy Disciple, of course, 2-time world champion, currently holding 2 belts. If I don't mention Disciple, he will disown me. Uncle Ralph, my almost new adopted Uncle Ralph over in England. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. tuning in here on the number one global radio station, Sportswire Radio. Be safe, be well if you're out there on the roads. I hope you enjoy. I will probably be out here for one more stream tomorrow night. So if you're bored, come by, say hi. But in the meantime, we were joined by Chris Pizzella of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, Justin Gianelli of the victorious New Jersey Devils of the Baseball Banter Show, and the man who has little voice this week, but hopefully he's going to have some days off here for our Plainview JFK boys. JV team, head coach, the Brew Force Brad Weiss, the legendary SJCLI Golden Eagle, also member of the Long Island Nets, Level Up Basketball, the Long Island Brew Crew. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you'll go to a sit-down Marks Marathon. Thank everybody for tuning in here on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. Good night. Happy New Year. Many blessings. God bless. And I'll see you soon and in 2023.